Member. Secretary Noem, the Constitution of the United States establishes a federal government divided into three branches. It is Congress that makes the laws, the President who takes care that the laws are faithfully executed, and it is the Judicial Department that says what the law is. The constitutional separation of powers and system of checks and balances is necessary for the protection of liberty, and any violation undermines the rights and liberties of everyone in the United States. The Trump administration has repeatedly ignored the federal courts, including the Supreme Court. President Trump has even said that, and I quote, doesn't know, end quote, whether he has to uphold the Constitution. The President of the United States said, doesn't know. Secretary Noem, is it the policy of the Department of Homeland Security to follow orders issued by federal courts?
Yes, we are following all federal court orders.
So the answer is yes?
We are following all federal court orders, yes.
Well, as just one of the many examples, a federal judge required FEMA, and I quote, immediately cease, in the code, efforts to withhold disbursement of federal grant funding appropriated by Congress. The court later found evidence that FEMA, an agency under your purview, was in direct violation of the court orders. So court orders were not followed, as you see. Yes or no?
We are following court orders. Grants are being reevaluated, but they are being obligated and appropriated according to how Congress has laid out.
Well, Secretary Noem, we all took an oath to uphold the laws and Constitution of the United States. It is a sad day that I have to sit here and issue a reminder. You and the Department of Homeland Security must respect the Constitution and the courts. Mr. Chairman, I want to yield my rest of my time to the gentleman from New York.
Gentleman yields. Mr. Goldman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Tanadar. Secretary Noem, your opening statement includes a lot of data and numbers, but it doesn't mention asylum.
Gentlelady's time has expired. I now recognize Ms. Ramirez for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, it's good to see you. I'm going to go straight to the questions because I have a lot of them. Let me start just following up with Congressman Goldman about judiciary. Do you agree that the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land? Yes or no, Secretary?
We are abiding by all federal judges' orders, absolutely.
So, yes, it's a co-equal branch of government. Okay, well, let me ask you a follow-up question to that. Do you agree that Congress is a co-equal branch of government and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor legislation and appropriations duly authorized by Congress? Yes or no?
Yes, that's why I'm thrilled to work
Well, let me ask you the follow-up question here because I have a lot of them. Do you agree that Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse? Yes or no?
Yes, that is a duty.
Do you
of
believe
Congress
that,
to be
let me
able
ask
to
you another
appropriate
follow-up,
funds.
it's just yes or no. Do you believe you have the power to disregard congressional appropriations and unilaterally repurpose funds that have been duly appropriated by Congress? Yes or no?
Ma'am, we are not doing that.
So the
We are
answer to
using
you is no.
dollars as to
All
how
right,
they
well,
were
it was a yes or
appropriated.
no,
We're ensuring the
Secretary. Let me
programs have
continue.
integrity.
Interestingly, you said no. But since you've been Secretary, you have repeatedly disregarded the law. You have illegally impounded funds that Congress appropriated and that your branch of government must implement pursuant to the law. Yet you've closed offices established in law, including the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, the Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman, the Office of the Citizenship and Immigration Services, and you've canceled contracts for programs authorized in law, including shelter and service programs and citizenship and integration grants. You've obstructed and roughed up members of this committee as they attempted to conduct congressional oversight, and then you vilified them. But my question is, if they were so bad, why were they allowed to go in after to conduct oversight? Let me just continue. You redirected funds to terrorize our communities. You created taxpayer-funded political propaganda campaigns to terrorize families and children who don't sleep at night because of the terror of those commercials that you are putting out there. You hold sick, disrespectful press conferences in my state where, let me be clear, you are not welcome. You corruptly used emergency authority to avoid procurement to make Trump's private prison donors richer by directing $45 billion for them to expand ICE detention centers. You defunded work to address real threats to the homeland, all while you pursued college newspaper editors, labor leaders, and even a Harvard scientist who failed to declare frog embryos at the airport. Clearly, we don't have time for all my questions, so I have 13 pages worth of questions that I will be submitting to the record that I expect you and the administration to answer. But here is my final question to you. When you took your oath, did you swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America? Yes or no?
Yes, I did.
So I find it laughable. You don't behave like someone who takes that oath seriously. And let me tell you why. We don't live in a dictatorship or a monarchy. Trump's will is not the guiding doctrine of this nation, and our country is not a playground for his or your twisted authoritarian fantasies. We are a democracy. We defend the Constitution and we affirm the rule of law. We respect the co-equal branches of government and we uphold our rights, even when we disagree. The foundation of our nation is based on a core set of constitutional rights upon which our prosperity, our pluralism, and our peace depend on it. You, however, have been leading this work for 116 days, and in that time, you have profiled and dehumanized our neighbors. You've betrayed our constitutional commitment to due process. You've deported United States citizens. You've undermined the courts. You've broken the law. You've engaged in corruption, and you've weaponized the immigration system to violate civil rights. As Senator Murphy perfectly stated, your department is out of control, but you're responsible. You have betrayed the sacred fundamentals of your oath. And I believe to my core that you are not fit to hold the office. And I again, to your face, demand your immediate resignation. And I put it and place it on the record for all of us to see. With that, Chairman, I yield back.
Generally yields. Mr. Gabarino is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, thank you so much for being here today. I'm the chairman of the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity Infrastructure Protection, so I work with CISA a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Senator Fetterman.
Thank you. Secretary, hi, hello.
Hi, Senator.
As you may know, I'm from Pennsylvania, and now I occupy perhaps a unique position. I've been very, very, very pro-immigration, but I early identified the serious problem about the border, the security. And I've said this publicly, I'll say it now, that my party failed to secure our border. And we deserve to pay a political price for that. And I've been trying to find a way forward to move forward on those things. I voted for you. Not because you and I agree on a lot of political things and we're in different parties, but you're the secretary and I'm a member of this committee, so I believe we have to find a way to work forward together. And I'm not here for fireworks or to try to create like something to be clipped on TV. I'm honestly coming, asking for your help about a situation here. So now, I have a constituent, his name's Ramin, and he's an Afghani who served alongside our service members there in the war. He is a resident of Philadelphia. Now, he's a surgeon, and he saved American lives. And now he is waiting to be approved like a green card. And now he helped evacuate our forces through an airlift. Now, and his two brothers, and of course we can't name them due to their concerns, but they're trapped in Pakistan. And the risk for removal for Afghanistan, and they face torture and death because of their commitment for a free and democratic Afghanistan. They've saved American lives, and they have defended our forces in there. And now here, that's part of my concern right now. And if looking for help, honestly, and that's one of the reasons why I voted for you, because we want to try to find a way, because not all immigration is just about securing our border, we know, but it's about helping people that deserve to come to our nation after serving in such an amazing, great risk, or there's now. So there was the president's executive order suspending refugee resettlement now, but again, they kind of got caught up in the middle of that. And I'm not here looking for the theater. I'm just here to come because I believe they deserve to be here for the sacrifices and what they've put at risk. And I'm asking if we're able to get some kind of, working with my office, please, to find a way to bring these Afghani heroes that saved American lives during that war, because things may got caught up in these executive orders. So that's really all I'm asking today.
Yeah, Senator, we will certainly work with your office on those specific cases. We have 8,000 individuals that have been granted asylum since President Trump has been in office, looking at cases much like you have. And these individuals that are here that may have been on a different program like TPS that is no longer going to be in place in a couple of months, we have the opportunity to work with them to get them qualified. Many of the concerns with some of these countries, when you're talking about interacting with them and giving them status and green cards here in the United States, is the ability to vet them. And it sounds like the individuals that you know have been thoroughly vetted and in partnership with the United States. And so that is something that we'll look at and we'll certainly work with you on, recognizing their service to our country.
Yeah, I would be profoundly grateful if my office can work with your team, and perhaps even with state as well too. So that's all this is about too.
Yep.
It's a political truth that we have to find a way to work together, because there are truth, and it is not owned by one side or the other. So I look forward to finding a solution here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Moreno.
Secretary Noem, thank you for being here. Thank you for your work.
Madam Secretary, I have a question related to something more close to home for me in the community in El Paso with DHS employees. For decades, CBP employees who work at our land ports of entry have been contractually allowed by CBP to have an off-site location for their union. And this off-site location is completely funded by union dues, not by taxpayer money. And again, this was something agreed to in their contract. I was shocked and alarmed to learn that they were told by DHS they could no longer be off-site, and they were forced to come into a DHS facility in El Paso. It's a conference room, media training room. So that part of their contract, that longstanding agreement, was violated in my eyes. Are you aware of this at all?
I have heard about it, but I don't know the details of that agreement, so I can follow up with you and get that back to you. And if you would lay out the concerns for being co-located, I think that would be fantastic for me to know.
We will. We'll make sure to communicate with your team. Would love to work with you on this. The same has not been true for the Border Patrol Union. So there's disparate treatment, and additionally, just to very quickly lay out why it's important for union members to be able to speak to their union leaders in private, and being located in a small conference room, media training room, offers no privacy. There are other issues, but I look forward to working with you on that.
I do know that the difference in the two unions is important, and I'll look into how those were interpreted. And I also know that the one union is located under the Treasury Union as well, and that defines some requirements and for how it's regulated and set out going forward. So I'll see if that is the determining factor on why there was a difference in how the locations were determined.
And I would ask, Madam Secretary, that you please allow the El Paso Union to continue to be housed off-site. It is their preference, doesn't impact the budget or appropriations. They pay for it. So I don't see a reason why this long-standing, decades-long situation should be changed. So would ask for your support for that, please.
I'll look into it.
Okay, perfect. I also wanted to ask you about this NBC News story, and I'll enter into the record this article as well. U.S. citizen family traumatized after ICE raided their Oklahoma home in search of someone else. And according to the local affiliate, KFOR, which was reporting on this story, immigration agents raided the home last week. They had a search warrant for the home, but the suspects listed on the warrant were no longer living in the home. The family was forced to wait outside in the rain during the search. A mother and her girls, all U.S. citizens. Their money was taken, their laptop, their cell phone. I asked you at the top of our first round if you believed it was important for DHS and if you would attest to the fact that DHS needs to rectify any mistakes. If this were a mistake, will you ensure that this family, this U.S. citizen family, gets its property back in a timely manner?
Well, in that particular situation, the warrant for that situation was on the house and the facility, not on the individuals that were there. And so that house was being used for human smuggling. And so those operations were conducted against the facility. And even in that situation, there was some individuals there with the same last names and some of the similarities.
But
and
if
so
it were a
are-
mistake,
we are
Madam
continuing-
Secretary,
we
if
believe
it were a
everything was
mistake.
done appropriately, and we'll continue to make sure that it is done and handled appropriately.
All right. Well, appreciate you looking into it. That not my constituents, but you had mentioned in your testimony, and you've said previously, that the focus of your agency is to go after the worst of the worst, people who are here illegally. But we have seen reporting and spoken to individuals, we meaning Congress, that in fact, there have been abuses on that front. People with legal protections have been deported. I laid out in the first round U.S. citizen children. I don't know, and I asked, and you said you'd get back to me about whether parents actually filled out the ICE forms that are normally used for those processes. U.S. citizen families with nothing to do with human trafficking, and now DHS employees as well, in my view, have been subjected to an abuse of power. And we all swore an oath to the Constitution. This is a democratic republic. Rule of law is important, due process is important, and ultimately that will be my North Star, not just in this hearing, but throughout everything that I work on as a member of Congress. I thank you, Madam Secretary, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady from Texas, the floor is yours for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Ranking Member. Secretary Noem, thanks for being here, appreciate it. I'm proud to represent my border community of El Paso, Texas. Born and raised there, third generation border resident. My kids are fourth generation. I have a lot of questions, and I've structured them in a way that they should be simple yes or no. So I'm going to ask that you please respond as simply as possible so I can get through as many of my questions as possible. My first question is, when the Department of Homeland Security makes a mistake, will you assure this committee and Congress that DHS, that you will acknowledge that mistake, take accountability for it, and rectify it, most importantly?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'll follow back up with that question. I want to one of the first topics I want to talk about is what President Trump said recently: homegrowns are next. And I'd like to enter into the record an NPR story. Homegrowns are next. Trump hopes to deport and jail U.S. citizens abroad. I was happy to hear your acknowledgement that that is not legal, but I am curious about the reconciliation bill and the appropriations requests that you will make. Will any of the funding, either through appropriations or through reconciliation, be used to execute this policy idea of Donald Trump's, which is deporting U.S. citizens abroad?
We have not deported any U.S. citizens, and so that false media narrative that you've heard out there just simply isn't true.
Well,
What I would say.
So my question, yes or no, will
comes
the
to
reconciliation or
reconciliation and the
appropriations
dollars
be
that-
used for that?
The reconciliation dollars that we've asked for is $175 billion that will be focused and is reflected
But
in
yes
what the
or no,
president
will it be
released.
used for those purposes which
we are-
Donald Trump acknowledged
We're
is
going to continue to use the
policy?
authorities and follow the Constitution to
Okay.
implement
All right,
policies that will make
reclaiming my
sure.
time. I'd like to now focus on U.S. citizens who were deported. In fact, 3 children so far, likely more children. One of those children with cancer who was deported without the medication necessary to address that child's cancer. Again, a U.S. citizen. The lawyers have said that they were not given, the family was not given an opportunity to make plans for the kids. And so they were deported, essentially, again, U.S. citizens. I have a question about the forms that ICE is supposed to utilize when engaging with parents who have children, the parents who are being deported and the U.S. citizen children. One of those forms is ICE Form 71-078, or the Caregiver Designation at Arrest form. Were any of the individuals who were deported, who had U.S. citizen children deported with them, were they given an opportunity to sign that form?
When these, the specific cases that you're referencing with these children, it was the parents' choice to take their children with them.
And did ICE
Which it is the
follow
policy of
through
the
on the
Trump
policy?
administration to keep families together.
Did,
That is what we have
ma'am,
continued
reclaiming
to
my
do,
time.
is that
I
these
told you at the
children,
top of this,
their
ma'am,
parents took-
ma'am, reclaiming my time. I said the questions are really simple, yes or no. Was that form used in any of those cases?
I will get back
yes
to you
or
on
no?
that
Okay,
specific form. I
perfect.
don't know the
Thank
number,
you.
but I do
That's-
know these mothers
Okay,
went on
thank
the
you.
record
The
filling out
second form,
paperwork
ma'am,
and in
reclaiming my
interviews
time.
reiterating
Ma'am,
they wanted to
please,
keep their
ma'am,
children with them.
reclaiming my time. I'd like you to avoid the filibuster so I can get to all my questions, please.
Answering your questions with
So
that.
the second ICE form that I'd like to ask you about is ICE Form 71-76, which is also it's pre-removal parental interests election form. Can you get back to me on that? Were all of the parents allowed to sign that? Are the parents allowed to speak to lawyers before they're deported, or to speak to their U.S. citizen spouses before they're deported?
They are given the opportunity.
Okay, so you can guarantee that every one of those parents.
We followed all the normal policies and procedures.
So
and
they were
everything.
allowed
Every
to
case was
talk to a
handled
lawyer? That's a
exactly
yes?
As it is authorized.
Is that a
and laid
yes?
out by-
That's a yes?
Everything was handled
That's-
appropriately and
but-
correctly.
But did
in
they all
every
get to
single
talk
case
to a
that you've
lawyer?
addressed
Okay, reclaiming my
Under the
time.
policy.
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, I'm out of time. I have a number of other questions we'll get to in the next round. Thank you.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman, Madam
Senator.
Secretary. A press release came out from the Department of Homeland Security a couple days ago. It said that members of Congress in New Jersey that went to the Delaney Hall ICE detention facility could, quote, could have just scheduled a tour. I guess I'd just like to hear from you if you can confirm that you understand that members of Congress by law are allowed to show up unannounced to conduct oversight visits of ICE detention facilities.
Yes, they can conduct oversight, but Senator, what I would ask is that they understand that that doesn't mean they could show up with a mob with the intention to break in and assault law enforcement officers. That's what happened at Delaney Hall last week.
You're familiar
is
that-
those individuals and those members of Congress were surrounded by criminals, creating criminal and perpetuating criminal acts.
You understand
But
that
when
they
you
were
show up
already
and ask for a
within
tour,
the
we
facility.
facilitated every single tour that every member of Congress has wanted. We've always done that, and we have to, when we have a tour, also make sure that we've addressed security concerns and have enough staff and all of that, and we were accommodating that when those individuals showed up and they decided instead to break in.
You know that they were already on the ICE premise, already facilitating into having the tour when there was the arrest of the mayor. They were not breaking into
They had broken
the
through the outer fence, and they were interior on federal property when
They
the
were
crimes
invited
occurred.
in by ICE as the ICE was preparing to give them a tour.
That
You're
doesn't
aware of
give them an excuse to start punching law
But you
enforcement
understand that they were not
officers.
storming the fence.
Well, I
at
don't
the-
understand. Are you making excuses for their behavior that day?
I'm just trying to clarify what exactly happened.
Oversight is an important part of what Congress does and what you provide to our department, and we welcome it. We give tours when members of Congress ask for it. We just ask that they not be politicized, that they actually are there to provide the oversight that is needed to ensure that we're doing
if I
due
were to
diligence
show
in our
up
job.
And if I were to show up at ICE detention facility unannounced, I would be let in.
Yes, I would ask that you would be allowing us to secure the officers that we need to give you an appropriate tour, that we'd be able to cover the other bases and posts that they would have to leave to come and facilitate that. We may have to call other people in to help cover some of that because of the extra responsibilities, but we
I've done
can
this
do that.
before. I just wanted to make sure I heard that from you. I wanted to just go back to something that was raised earlier about habeas corpus. Can you confirm to us that you understand that any suspension of habeas corpus requires an act of Congress?
President Lincoln executed habeas corpus in the past with retroactive action by Congress. I believe that any president that was able to do that in the past, it should be afforded to our current day president. This president has never said he's going to do this. He's never communicated to me or his administration that they're going to consider suspending habeas corpus, but I do think the Constitution allows them the right to consider it.
When we saw what happened with, how many times has habeas corpus been suspended in our country?
Once that I know of.
4 times.
For certain. I'm not certain if those
but
were.
the instance that you were referring to was one where the courts subsequently showed that Congress is the one that has the ability. Do you know what section of the Constitution the suspension clause of habeas corpus
I
is
do
in?
not. Nope.
Do you know which article it is in?
No, I do not, sir.
Okay, well, it is
The
in Article
suspension.
1. Do you know
Okay.
which branch of government Article 1 outlines the tasks and the responsibilities for?
Yes,
Which one?
Congress.
Yes. Stephen Miller has said that he is actively considering, that there is active consideration of habeas corpus. Have you had a conversation with Stephen Miller about suspending habeas corpus?
I have not.
When it comes to FEMA, this is something I'm concerned about. Being from New Jersey, we've had challenges with Superstorm Sandy and others in the past. I was alarmed when I saw some reports that the acting head, Richardson, said last Thursday that he's about 80 to 85% done with the hurricane season plan, given that we are just days away from hurricane season beginning. I just wanted to ask you, is he done with his hurricane preparedness plan?
He is working diligently with the employees at FEMA and are prepared for hurricane season. What you
Have
referenced.
you seen this plan? Have you seen this plan? Is he
Yes, I've been
presented it to
actively
you?
engaged in hurricane response and preparation.
seen the
We're
plan?
pre-staging people, pre-staging equipment.
Is that
We're
plan
making sure that
something-
we have tabletop exercise we're running through with all of our regions on what their response will be. It's been very extensive how we've laid out this plan.
And
What-
will you be able to share
what-
that plan with this committee?
I will check and make sure
Yeah,
that
if
I
you can
can,
check
but
on
I would
that.
think that we would be able to do
Okay.
that. I can't
Just
see any
one-
reason that would
Just
be.
one last thing. A couple weeks ago, you said that you were considering restarting in-person training at the National Fire Academy.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask if you're prepared to tell this committee that that you are moving forward with restarting in-person trainings.
Yes, the plan is to do that again, so.
That has been approved
yeah.
to restart?
Yes, it has been.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I yield back.
Senator Scott.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for joining us today. The Department of Homeland Security is responsible for a number of critical missions that safeguard our nation, from preventing terrorism to cyber attacks to securing our northern as well as southern borders, and of course, responding to natural disasters. I am disappointed in a disappointing departure from prior administrations, including President Trump's first administration. We are holding today's hearing to discuss the department's budget needs without having received a detailed budget request from the president or briefing from the department's components about their budget needs. However, we have seen in just a few short months under the Trump administration how the department has undergone tremendous changes. I have serious concerns that some of these changes are harming rather than helping the department in its mission to protect the safety and the security of all Americans. For example, as we head into hurricane season and the wildfire season, the administration has halted critical FEMA programs that support flood mitigation and slashed staff who focus on disaster relief. These are critical resources for states in the aftermath of a natural disaster, and the administration has provided little or no justification for these changes. FEMA has even internally acknowledged that it is not ready for hurricane season, which starts in just 11 days. And despite that, the administration is still planning on shifting the burden for disaster response to state and local governments, which will put Americans at grave risk the next time disaster strikes, which is inevitable. Similarly, at a time when we are facing increasing threats from cyber attacks, the administration plans to drastically cut our nation's primary cybersecurity agency, CISA. CISA is supposed to be finalizing a rule required by law that this committee passed to improve cyber incident reporting to better protect our critical infrastructure from cyber attacks. Yet, reporting indicates that 700 CISA employees have taken deferred resignation under pressure from this administration. CISA's work on election security has stopped, and the agency's advisory committees have been shuttered. These actions make us less prepared to address cybersecurity attacks. The administration also proposes cutting $247 million from the Transportation Security Administration's budget to reduce the number of frontline TSA agents. At a time when air travel is at an all-time high, and we are entering the busy summer travel season, these cuts only threaten to make our skies and the flying travelers less secure. At the same time, the administration has also cut congressionally mandated oversight offices that protect the civil rights and civil liberties of individuals who interact with DHS components. These offices were put in place to ensure that DHS personnel can conduct their important national security missions effectively, while safeguarding the rights of the people in this country. Shutting these offices down not only puts Americans at risk, it also is a violation of the Homeland Security Act itself. Despite several inquiries into your office for more information, I have yet to receive sufficient explanation for these actions. I also have serious concerns about this administration's inappropriate use of the U.S. military for domestic immigration enforcement and the outrageous use of taxpayer dollars, which I will be asking questions about, for detention at Guantanamo Bay. Certainly anyone concerned about prudent use of taxpayer money should be outraged by what's happening down there. Our nation faces a multitude of homeland security challenges, and this committee has always been willing to work to address them on a bipartisan basis. Secretary Noem, when we first met prior to your confirmation, you gave me a commitment that you would work with me to address the many threats facing our nation. And I hope today's hearing will be an honest discussion about the resources the department needs to do just that, and I welcome having that kind of discussion. I would hope that we would be able to have that discussion in a way that we have done in this committee in a bipartisan way for as long as I can remember, where our first round would be 7 minutes, and then a second round would be 5 minutes. Certainly, Chairman Paul, I would hope you would continue the precedent that I've always known. When Senator Johnson was chair of the committee, he always made sure that everybody had 7 minutes. Certainly, Homeland Security is a primary concern for you, Madam Secretary, and for all of us. I'm not sure why the chair is insisting on 5 minutes. I know you're fully capable of answering for 7 minutes, and you shouldn't be concerned about it, but apparently the chairman is concerned about that extra time. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd hope we'd get 7 minutes on the first round and then 5, as we always have, as long as this committee has been in existence. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Ms. McIver is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. A lot has been said, and I expect a lot more will be said about the department's interaction with members of this body when it comes to oversight. But this is not about me. Madam Secretary, it's not every day we have a cabinet member before this committee. As you know, the members of this committee have constitutional oversight responsibility for your department, and there are many things regarding this administration's homeland security policies that require our immediate attention. That is the work I am here to do today and every day. Secretary, this committee and the American people deserve answers for the actions of the Department of Homeland Security under this administration and the policies that have been put into place. The department has overseen a regime of cruelty, chaos, and deep disregard for human dignity, all under the pretense of security. The department is being mismanaged, and its policies undermine our nation's values. This does not make us safer, the exact opposite, exactly. Secretary, we need answers about your department's union busting at TSA, deporting U.S. citizens, terminating the legal status of international students for no apparent reason, and disregarding the rule of law. None of these issues at your department exist in a vacuum. In fact, they are all fundamentally connected to the administration's overarching cruelty. We want to hear from you because we are hoping you can make it make sense for us. Because with all due respect, we are all trying to understand why in the world this is taking place. In my district and around this nation, countless international students had their visas revoked without due process, without warning, and without any regard for how this would devastate their lives. These are students who came here to learn, to build their futures, and join our workforce, only to have the rug pulled out from under them by this department's actions. How can we expect international students to trust our institutions and contribute to our economy when we treat them like they've done something wrong just because they are here? Are we no longer the home of the American dream? I also want you to understand DHS's impact on our entire workforce. I proudly represent over 1,000 dedicated TSA workers who had the right to unionize. But that right has been stripped away by your department. This is an attack on the people who safeguard our skies and whose dedication we rely on now more than ever. And the destruction doesn't stop there. I represent communities that live in constant fear each and every day. Families too terrified to step outside and send their kids to school, go grocery shopping, or take a trip to the doctor because of the harassment of ICE and Homeland Security. This isn't public safety, it's state-sponsored fear. I understand that this administration believes that it is its business to scare people into submission and act alone with no regard for the law to decide who is worthy to live in this country or not. However, it is this committee's business to make sure your department is held accountable and to get the American people the answers they've been looking for. So, with that, Madam Secretary, I have a few yes or no questions. Do you agree that revoking student visas without notice can cause fear and confusion among international students? Yes or no?
Congressman, I do not.
Congresswoman, but yes or no?
Congresswoman, I do not decide legal status or visa programs for
I'll
students.
take that as a yes. Do you support restoring full collective bargaining rights for TSA employees? Yes or no?
Ma'am, currently today TSA does not have the
Yes or
ability
no?
to unionize.
Okay, take that as a no. Do you believe that TSA workers should make a livable wage? Yes or no?
Yes, TSA workers are critically important to
Thank
our
you for
security
that. Are
systems
you
for our
aware
airlines.
that recent student visa revocations occur without due process or proper notification?
Ma'am, I don't make a determination of status.
Yes or
The
no?
Department of State does
I'm guessing
that.
you don't know? Okay. Do you believe that TSA workers have the right to better workplace conditions?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
TSA
great. Thank you for
workers
that.
are incredibly
Do you
important
believe
to
that
our-
students should have an opportunity to appeal before their visas are revoked? Yes or no?
All processes are followed and that are set out as tools.
I'm guessing
and
it's a no. Okay,
processes
one more
in
last
Congress.
question in 9 seconds. Do you believe that revoking collective bargaining rights for TSA workers affects their morale and job performance? Yes or no?
I believe TSA is critically important.
Okay,
in
I'll
the
take
future
that
and
as
they have
maybe
been-
you don't know, maybe it's yes or no.
Gentlelady's time has
That
expired. I now
that
recognize
yield.
Mr. Gonzalez for 5 minutes of his.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here. You know, Michigan's a border state, so we need each other. We have a very big bridge that's being inaugurated, ribbon cut in September. We need that to be fully staffed. We have a lot going on in Michigan as a northern border state, so we need each other. But what I'm concerned about is that you've taken the mandate to close off the border beyond going after, as you say, the, quote, most dangerous illegal immigrants. I'm a CIA officer. I worked my entire life to protect the homeland. If someone's here illegally, they need to not be here. They've committed a crime by being here. They need to go back to wherever they're from. But my concern is that either through sloppiness or intent, you have gone far beyond going after the, quote, most dangerous illegal immigrants and gone into legal immigrants who were given the ability to be here, and even American citizens. And when I think about that, you know, there are lots of people in this country, including me, who have families who fled this kind of environment where they have no rights, where they have no due process, where they don't have habeas corpus. So while I'll be the first to say, coming from a state that was won by Trump, that there is a mandate to do something about the border, I think it is absolute dangerous overreach to go beyond that and start picking up American citizens and people who have the legal right to be here, lawful immigrants who have done everything right. So first and foremost, do you acknowledge that your department has made some mistakes, any mistakes, in going after either American citizens or legal immigrants here in the time that you've been in office?
We have not deported any U.S. citizens.
Detained?
Or people get interviewed. If they get interviewed and they go through that process and if we find that they're U.S. citizens or legal immigrants, they stay in the United States.
Have you deported
We have to
any
go through the vetting process.
Have any American citizens, including children, been deported during your time in office?
We have children that mothers have chosen to keep with them. So those
By my
mothers
count, you have 10 American citizens, including children with cancer, who have been deported out of the country. I understand you're saying it's their choice.
But the mothers,
it's hard to imagine a small child having a choice. But have you gone after legal immigrants? Again, your standard in your opening statement was the most dangerous illegal immigrants. Does that include PhD students and master's students at colleges across the country, unarmed? Are they the most dangerous illegal when they have status and no weapons?
I don't decide who gets status through a student program. This Department of State decides that, and we enforce it.
Oh, come on.
That's what our Department of Homeland Security does.
I just would offer
Those
that,
student
again, I
programs,
have no qualms with going after folks who are here illegally. That is not my concern. That was part of my job, was to prevent people from coming here illegally in a former life. My concern is you're sending a chill down the spine of America by going after people who either have legal status or American citizens. And when my colleagues ask you about habeas corpus, and you say, literally, we can review the tape, that you believe it's a right the president has, you sat here in front of all of us and swore an oath to the Constitution, and that is not at all what habeas corpus is. It is a right that we all get, that American citizens get, that people who are in the United States legally have. So my concern is, it's complete overreach. I don't think American citizens, even those who voted for Trump, believe that you should be able to just grab someone off the street, sloppy, who has the legal right to be here, and certainly an American citizen. And I just am concerned that while you say you're going after the most dangerous folks, what you're actually doing is going after folks for political reasons, right? A PhD student that's unarmed is not at the top of the list.
And we're not deporting U.S. citizens, and we're not deporting
10
people
of them
who
have
have
been
legal
deported.
status here.
10 American citizens
If the children have gone
deported.
with their parents, it's because their
let me
parents
ask you
wanted
another
them with
question
them.
about cybersecurity. You know, you've cut $500 million from the budget. What specific programs are you cutting? Because there are programs that really aid states and locals that we depend on for cybersecurity. And we know that right now, while we may have good security in the federal government, if you are a local state official, you're depending on the federal government. So have you cut the ISAC program, the program to states and locals on cybersecurity?
The president's recommended budget has a reduction in $491 million.
Does it cut that program? I've heard the
and what
talking
it's
point.
doing
Does
is putting
it cut the
CISA
program?
back on mission.
And
it's
you can't
ensuring
say
that
this is the most
cybersecurity is going to be strengthened.
You cannot say it's the most cyber-secure administration if you're cutting the program to my state and to your state.
It will
and if you
be
look
when
on record, that's what you've cut. I yield back.
Time has expired. Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, good to see you.
If service to this committee, please reach out to us. And again, thank you for the work that you and President Trump are doing. I yield back.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields. I now, I think, recognize our last member making comments today. Mr. Garcia, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Madam Secretary. And you said that you're committed to complying with the Constitution, which we, of course, all appreciate and think is important. Now, we all know that the Fifth Amendment states, and I just want to be very clear, that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, the Fifth Amendment. Just to be clear, in a simple yes or no, this actually says person. Is that correct, Madam Secretary?
Correct.
Thank you. And you are aware that person has been defined by the Supreme Court repeatedly multiple times means citizens and non-citizens. Simple yes or no, is that correct?
Correct, I believe.
Thank you. In an April 7th ruling just recently, the Supreme Court has reaffirmed, and I'll quote, "It is well established that the Fifth Amendment entitles aliens to due process under the law in the context of removal proceedings." But of course, the Department deported 230 people to be imprisoned indefinitely in brutal prison. We've deported U.S. citizens, as noted today, children without constitutional protections. We've illegally arrested students. And we know that just one of these students was released just last week, and you were mandated to do so. Now, the Fifth Amendment is clear. Madam Secretary, you committed to uphold the Constitution. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And you now, of course, commit to following the Fifth Amendment. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, Madam Secretary, you are violating that amendment as we speak, and you are breaking your oath. You are deporting people, and the department is deporting people without due process. We cannot deport U.S. citizens. Without due process, there is nothing that Donald Trump could essentially be stopped in grabbing people off the street. That's happening today. Now, maybe someone in government might not like your tattoos. Maybe they don't like how somebody votes. Maybe they don't want to see how someone represents your constituents in Congress. But if you can't see a judge, no one can protect you. And I hope that you and I and everyone here can agree with that. And apparently, not even the Supreme Court actually matters when it comes to the case, of course, of Kilmar Garcia. But let's remember that we're not just deporting people, we're sending some of them to be locked up in one of the most dangerous prisons in the world. Now, Madam Secretary, you've heard this case today, but I have to speak about it one more time. I think it's really important. This is Andrew Romero. He had an appointment to come to this country to claim asylum. We gave him that appointment. The United States government gave him his asylum appointment. He comes for his appointment, he passes a credible fear interview. He's a gentle person as described by his family. He's openly gay. He was leaving his country for persecution of being gay. He did everything right, claimed asylum, that was legal. And then we sent him to a dangerous prison at the border with no due process. There are claims about his tattoos. He has his parents' names on his tattoos and 2 crowns that relate to a festival back in his hometown. We are paying to lock this young gentleman up forever. What I would ask is the ambassador in El Salvador, we have asked for proof of life of Andrew. He has had no access to lawyers or family since he has been taken over a month now. No one knows if he's even alive. His mother just wants to know if he is alive. So my ask to you, Madam Secretary, is the same that I asked the ambassador. Can we do a proof of life check on Andrew just to see if he is alive?
Congressman, we are utilizing the tools that Congress has given us to apply due process to individuals. We are doing that for every person, and we are making sure that we're following what you have given us as far as guidance and how things should be implemented.
Would you commit to just letting his mother know, as a mother to mother, if Andrew is alive? He was given an asylum appointment by the United States government. We gave him an appointment. We said, Andrew, come to the border at this time to claim asylum. He was taken to a foreign prison in El Salvador. His mother just wants to know if he is alive. Can we check and do a wellness check on him?
Our asylum applications are different than the granting of asylum, and I don't know the specifics of this individual case. This individual is in El Salvador, and the appeal would be best made to the president and to the government of El Salvador on this.
This
is not under my jurisdiction.
Madam Secretary, you have said that CCOT in El Salvador is one of the tools in the toolbox that you have. You have said that and has been quoted as saying that. You and the president have the ability to check if Andrew is alive and if he's not being harmed. Would you commit at least into looking and asking El Salvador if he is alive?
This is a question that's best asked to the president and the government of El Salvador.
Absolutely. And I think you know very well that you could ask that question. What you are choosing to do, Madam Secretary, is disregard this young man's life, this young man's family, who was given an appointment by the United States. I think it is shameful that you won't even request to see if this young man is alive. His family has no idea, has no access to lawyers. I would hope that we would have the humanity to just check if this young man is okay. With that, I yield back. It's shameful.
Gentleman yields. I think we've covered everyone. Mr. Rankin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Absolutely.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Madam Secretary. I'm sure you've seen the recent reports that your agency is going to sponsor a reality TV show, in which immigrants would compete for U.S. citizenship. Is DHS seriously vetting a reality show for immigrants to obtain U.S. citizenship? Your spokesperson is quoted in the Wall Street Journal. I'm going to ask that article be in the record, Mr. Chairman, if there's no objection, saying that, quote, it's in the very beginning stages of that vetting process. Each proposal undergoes a thorough vetting process prior to denial or approval.
Sir, we have no knowledge of a reality show. There may have been something submitted to the department, but I did not know
So
anything
you
about
can
this
confirm that
reality
you're not
show.
considering
Until the reporter reached out, we told him, we have no knowledge of it, we don't know what he's talking about, and they still printed wrong information. So that
spokesperson
article,
said-
in fact, they had to change it later because they lied so bad, and they had us on the record saying, I had no knowledge of a reality show, the department didn't. There may have been something submitted somewhere along the line because there are proposals pitched to the department, but me and my executive team have no knowledge of a
Well,
reality
I
show,
hope
and it's
that
not under
your
consideration.
response is to confirm that you will not do a reality show
There are no plans whatsoever to do a reality show.
and that
On
your
that.
spokesperson was completely misquoted as saying that it was being vetted.
That article was completely inaccurate and false. And the fact that they
Let me
printed
go
it
to
when they
some
knew
of
it was
the
false
expenditures.
was a dereliction of their work.
Let me go to some of the expenditures that your department is making. $200 million for an ad campaign fawning over President Trump's supposed accomplishments. $21 million between January and April for transporting around 400 immigrants to Guantanamo Bay. About half of them were flown back to the United States. $6 million to El Salvador to imprison 300 individuals in a prison known for grave human rights violation, and many more, including $1,000 to immigrants wishing to self-deport. I understand one of the planes left within the last 24 hours. None of these expenditures are in your present budget. Aren't you going to run out of money before the end of this fiscal year? The continuing resolution doesn't cover any of them.
No, all the dollars being spent are being utilized as authorized and appropriately for the
Well,
situation.
none of them
That
have
flight
been
that left
authorized,
yesterday,
though, under the
flight that-
continuing resolution or any other way that we normally authorize monies. You're just spending recklessly, and it would seem wastefully, without authorization. That's against the law.
Well, Senator, I completely disagree with you. I'm doing the job that the Secretary of Homeland Security is supposed to be doing, the one that the last secretary refused to do, that endangered the future of our
You
country.
may think
What
you're
I'm
doing
doing is
the
making
job,
sure we're
but
enforcing
you
our laws,
operate
and that
under
people who are here that are
authorization
criminal, illegal
that
aliens
this
are
committee
returned home.
provides. You are acting in a way you think you're doing your job, but
The
you
American
also have a
people
responsibility
told
to
us
follow
to
the
do
law.
this job. The American people overwhelmingly in the last election said, we want a secure border. We want to make sure that no
They did
longer
not tell
are the
you
scales of
to
justice
act
tipped in favor
outside
of
your legal
criminals.
authority and spend money that is not in your budget
All money is
authorized
being
by
spent
this
according to how it
Congress
is
or
authorized
any
and
other Congress.
appropriately.
Let me ask you about the money that is being used to supposedly repatriate Afghan allies, refugees to this country from the Taliban, Ukrainians who have fled here from Russian aggression. Can you confirm that money is being taken from the foreign aid allocation?
Are you talking about the temporary protective status program?
Correct.
Yeah. So
The repatriation, supposedly, of those individuals here under the temporary protected status program.
Yeah, so we do have thousands of individuals that are here that have been protecting or been participating in the TPS program. That has been reevaluated to see if that program is still being utilized the way that it is supposed to be, as intended by Congress when it was laid out.
But there are
If that is
documents
always
that have
intended
been
to be.
publicly reported that say the administration is going to use money from the foreign aid program, AID, to send those people back to countries where they will be persecuted, tortured, and perhaps killed,
We're
as
encouraging.
the Afghan allies would be. Let me finish my question, ma'am. Where they will be potentially killed, tortured Afghan allies who served us during our wars there, saved lives, of American soldiers and diplomats are going to be sent back to the Taliban using foreign aid money. Can you confirm that's the plan that's been reported in the Washington Post this morning?
No, I won't confirm that because that's not true. Those individuals have an opportunity to apply for asylum and other programs where they will be protected if their lives
There
are
is
in
a
danger
plan
from
to
the
send
government
back
that's in their
anyone
country.
who can't
Time
qualify
has
for
expired.
asylum.
Senator Moody.
Thank you, Chairman Rand, and welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
being here.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I can speak for everyone in this room, and
Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, thank you for being here. I'm sorry that I missed your call yesterday. I look forward to working closely with you. I say this with seriousness and respect, but your department is out of control. You are spending like you don't have a budget. You're on the verge of running out of money for the fiscal year. You are illegally refusing to spend funds that have been authorized by this Congress and appropriated by this committee. You are ignoring the immigration laws of this nation, implementing a brand new immigration system that you have invented that has little relation to the statutes that you are required, that you are commanded to follow, as spelled out in your oath of office. You are routinely violating the rights of immigrants who may not be citizens, but whether you like it or not, they have constitutional and statutory rights when they reside in the United States. Your agency acts as if laws don't matter, as if the election gave you some mandate to violate the Constitution and the laws passed by this Congress. It did not give you that mandate. You act as if your disagreement with the law, or even the public's disagreement with the law, is relevant and gives you the ability to create your own law. It does not give you that ability. Let's start with your spending. You are on track to trigger the Anti-Deficiency Act. That means you are going to spend more money than you have been allocated by Congress. This is a rare occurrence, and it is wildly illegal. Your agency will be broke by July, over 2 months before the end of the fiscal year. You may not think that Congress has provided enough money to ICE, but the Constitution and the federal law does not allow you to spend more money than you have been given or to invent money. And this obsession with spending at the border, as the chairwoman mentioned, has left the country unprotected elsewhere. The security threats to the United States are higher, not lower, than when before Trump came to office. To fund the border, you have illegally gutted spending for cybersecurity. As we speak, Russian and Chinese hackers are having a field day attacking our nation. You've withdrawn funds for disaster prevention. Storms are going to kill more people in this country because of your illegal withholding of these funds. Your myopia about the border, fueled by President Trump's prejudice against people who speak a different language, has shattered many of this country's most important defenses. Now let's talk about the impoundments. When Congress appropriates funds for a specific purpose, the administration has no discretion as to whether to spend or not spend that money unless you go through a very specific process with this committee. Let me give you two of many instances of this illegal impoundment. The first is the Shelter and Services Program. Senator Britt may want to zero that account out, but that account is funded, and it was funded in a bipartisan way. You don't like the program. Your policy is to treat migrants badly. I think that's abhorrent, but it doesn't matter that you don't like the program. You cannot cancel spending in this program, and you cannot use the funds as you have to fund other things, like ICE. You have also canceled citizenship and integration grants, which help lawful permanent residents become citizens, helping them take the citizenship test. I know your goal is to try to make life as hard as possible for immigrants, but that goal is not broadly shared by the American public. That's why Congress, in a bipartisan way, for decades, has funded this program to help immigrants in this country become citizens. Now let's talk about why encounters at the southern border are down so much. This is clearly going to be your primary talking point today. You will tell us that it represents a success. But the primary reason why encounters are down is because you are brazenly violating the law every hour of every day. You are refusing to allow people showing up at the southern border to apply for asylum. I acknowledge that you don't believe that people should be able to apply for asylum, but you don't get to choose that. The White House doesn't get to choose that. The law requires you to process people who are showing up at the border and who claim asylum. Why? Because our asylum law is a bipartisan commitment, an effort to correct for our nation's unconscionable decision to deny entry to Jews to this country who were being hunted and killed by the Nazis. Our nation, Republicans and Democrats, decided, wrote it into law, that we would not repeat that horror ever again, and thus we would allow for people
who were fleeing terror and torture to come here, arrive at the border, and make a case for asylum. Finally, let's talk about these disappearances. In an autocratic society, people who the regime does not like are people who are protesting the regime. They are just often picked up off the street, spirited away, sometimes to open-ended detention, sometimes they're never seen again. What you are doing, both the individuals who have legal rights to stay here, like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, or students who are just protesting Trump's policies, is immoral. And to follow the theme, it is illegal. You have no right to deport a student visa holder with no due process, simply because they have spoken in a way that offends the president. You can't remove migrants who a court has given humanitarian protection from removal. Now, reports suggest that you are planning to remove immigrants with no due process and send them to prisons in Libya. Libya is in the middle of a civil war. It is subject to a level 4 travel advisory, meaning we tell American citizens never to travel to Libya. We don't have an embassy there because it is not safe for our diplomats. Sending migrants with pending asylum claims into a war zone just because it's cruel is so deeply disturbing. Listen, I understand that my Republican colleagues on this committee don't view the policy the way that I do. My Republican colleagues don't share my level of concern for the way that this administration treats immigrants. That's fine. But what I don't understand is why we don't have consensus in the Senate and on this committee on the decision by this administration to impound the spending that we have decided together to allocate in defense of this nation. We as an appropriations committee, we work interminable hours to write and pass a budget. This budget is really hard to write and pass. And so we make ourselves irrelevant when we allow the administration to ignore what we have decided. And then when we look the other way, when the administration rounds up immigrants who are here illegally and have committed no offenses worthy of detainment, we also do potential irreversible damage to the Constitution. These should not be partisan concerns, destroying the power of Congress, eroding individuals' constitutional rights. This should matter to both parties. Madam Secretary, thank you for being here, and I look forward to your testimony.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Secretary, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
And I was glad to see in your recent testimony that you reaffirmed your obligations to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And I understand you had an exchange with Senator Murphy on the Abrego Garcia case. And so I'm just going to put the question directly to you. Are you or DHS doing anything to comply with the 9-0 Supreme Court order to facilitate his return to the United States? Just yes or no.
This administration is following all federal court orders.
Madam Secretary, this is a simple
It's
question.
the president's prerogative on conversations that
Madam
happen
Chair,
with the president of El Salvador.
I ask a simple question. We have a limited amount of time. I just asked you, Madam Secretary, whether or not you or the Department of Homeland Security are taking any action to facilitate the 9-0 Supreme Court decision to facilitate his return. This is a very simple question. Are you taking any action to facilitate his return, or are you not?
This administration is following and complying with all federal court orders
So
to make sure that we
So you are, because the court ordered that you facilitate his return, so you are facilitating his return.
Sir, Senator, thank you for the question, but what I would
Madam
tell you
Secretary,
is that we are following court orders
Madam
and that your advocacy for a known terrorist is alarming to me.
Madam Secretary.
It's alarming to me because he's a human smuggler.
Madam
he's a
Secretary,
wife
I'm going to have
beater
to reclaim
and
my
a terrorist, and he's not a U.S. citizen. He's a citizen of El Salvador, and he's home. If he were to come back
Madam
here,
Secretary,
we would take him immediately
All right,
back
I'm going to have to, Madam Secretary, you should know a couple facts then, which is, number one, in 2019, the Immigration Court said that he should not be returned to El Salvador because it would put his life in danger. The Trump administration at the time did not appeal that decision. After that, he got a work permit and was working legally in the United States of America. This is also why the district court and the appellate court and the Supreme Court have ruled as they have. I suggest that rather than make these statements here, that you and the Trump administration make them in court under oath, because despite what you just said, The federal district court, whose judge is hearing this case right now, said, and I'm quoting, that the administration has provided no evidence linking Abrego Garcia to MS-13 or any other terrorist activity. I'm not vouching for the man. I'm vouching for his due process rights.
Yes, you are, sir. You've
No,
been
no,
vouching
no,
for
Madam
him.
Secretary,
I
with
would
respect.
suggest that you defend and
Madam-
stand alongside
Madam,
the victims
this-
of
you're-
illegal
this is
crime in
political
this country, and
rhetoric.
the citizens who live here and
Do
are
you-
United States Americans. I would suggest you advocate for them as hard
Madam
as you do
Secretary,
those foreign terrorists.
I know you're doing a political speech
No,
here.
I'm
I
not,
get it.
sir.
I'm
No,
asking questions of law. No, you're just spewing
I truly
rhetoric.
believe this. I
Well, you're
truly believe
spewing
this
rhetoric.
as an
Let
American.
me ask you this. Do you agree with Justice Scalia in the Supreme Court opinion in Reno v. Flores that, I'm quoting, "It is well established that the Fifth Amendment entitles aliens to due process of law in deportation proceedings." End of quote.
Sir, we are utilizing every due process tool that this Congress has afforded us. Congress decides what
Madam
due process
Secretary,
is appropriate for every situation. Expedited removal is a due process that you have afforded us that we are utilizing. The Alien Enemies Act
I'm going
is
to
another
reclaim
tool
my
that
time,
we're
Madam
utilizing.
Secretary.
So
You
we are
are,
giving due
Madam
process
Secretary.
and using the tools
Madam
that
Secretary,
this Congress has given us.
this is really, I'm asking sort of simple questions of law and simple questions like, are you complying with the 9-0 Supreme Court decision? And you seem to think that's some kind of trick question. Let me ask you this. You were down at CCOT in El Salvador, and you said, and that I'm quoting, "It is one of the tools in the toolkit that we will use." And it's well known that the Trump administration is paying the government of El Salvador to keep these individuals, including those who the U.S. courts have determined were illegally taken out of the country in violation of their due process rights. Have you seen the grant document between the United States and the government of El Salvador with respect to the CCOT?
It's important that everybody knows the consequences of what happens for their actions in this country. When you break the law and you're a member of a foreign
Madam
terrorist
Secretary, I asked you a
organization, there are
question. Have you
consequences
seen
to
the
that.
document? This is not hard.
Yes, I have.
Okay. And what are the provisions of the doc? So do you know what entities in El Salvador are
Sir,
receiving
I'm
the
sure
funds?
you can see this document as well and have looked at it for
I'm
evaluation.
glad you
as
raised
well.
that, Madam Secretary, because I sent you a letter along with many of my colleagues here on April 8th asking for, among other things, that document. Will you respond to the letter that we sent?
I will respond to your letter.
Thank you. Can I get some sense of when?
We will take a look at it. I don't remember seeing your letter yet, but I will certainly
Well,
take a
it's
look
been
at
there
it
over a
and give
month.
you a
The
response.
senator's time has
No,
expired.
Madam Chair.
Senator Kennedy?
Madam Chair.
Madam Secretary.
Secretary, I have some additional questions.
No,
related
sir,
to
that's up
fire
to you
cap.
to manage that time. Senator Kennedy?
Madam
Well, I need a little help from a chair that respects the members of the
Madam
committee. I'm sorry, Madam
Secretary.
Chair. This is
Next up, Senator Shaheen.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here this morning and for your testimony. I just want to, I'm not going to ask you to respond to this, but just to be clear, I think everybody on this committee agrees that we need to secure our southern border. We may disagree on exactly how to do that, but I think that is a value that most Americans share. I do think we can do it in a way that still provides due process to people who are here as green card holders. And I'm particularly concerned when I get calls from New Hampshire citizens who are stopped at our border and interrogated without any process, without being told why they're being stopped. So I just want to put that on your radar so that you understand that that is a concern that we are seeing and hearing from American citizens about. I have been concerned for a long time through a number of administrations about the lack of technology on our northern border. In New Hampshire, we have video cameras that are supposed to pick up people coming across the border, and there's no service to those video cameras because we don't have cell service on our northern border. Our Border Patrol station in Pittsburgh gets its power from Canada, and in 2018, Congress passed the Mobile Now Act to speed up deployment of communications equipment infrastructure on federal property. It's not just a public safety issue, it's a national security imperative, as I'm sure you would agree. So Understaffing, however, and red tape means that getting folks connected still takes way too long. And we've had some issues with the department in trying to get some of this equipment that we need on our northern border. So will you commit to ensuring that DHS will move expeditiously to improve communications infrastructure along New Hampshire's northern border?
Yeah, Senator, I will work with you on this. This is something that's come up several times with many of our senators and congressmen and women that represent the northern border. And I think that's a concern I hear quite often from people is with all the focus on the southern border, are you neglecting the northern border? And we are not. We have not pulled resources from the northern border, but we also recognize that we've got deficiencies there too. We do have some predator drones that are up there.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the reality is that the Stone Garden funds that used to have a percentage dedicated to the northern border have been taken for the southern border, so that our local law enforcement officials don't have the ability to access those funds and to get those grants in a way that's really important to help. So I hope you will look into that.
Those funds have been very important for our law enforcement, and so those are being reevaluated as well and assessed. And so I've had several people indicate to me that those are important to their local areas and local communities. The cameras you talked about, yes, do need to be fixed. The cell phone service and their reliance on that is not dependable, and we need the new technology upgrades in order to make sure that we can keep those operating. And we need more UAS and counter UAS technology at the northern border as well.
I understand that ICE has entered into an interagency agreement with the Bureau of Prisons to hold ICE detainees in our federal prison in Berlin, FCI Berlin, New Hampshire. I'm sure that you're aware that the Bureau of Prisons has faced chronic shortages in staffing for a number of years. This is particularly evident in Berlin, where it's being staffed at just over 60% for its corrections officers, and now it's hosting more than 230 detainees. So can you talk about how you're working to ensure that our federal prisons who are under contract with ICE are adequately staffed, and will you commit to ensuring that the Bureau of Prisons under contract with ICE is given the support that they need in order to hold those detainees?
Absolutely. That's all part of the evaluation that happens before that contract goes into place, is making sure they have the staffing and the requirements that meet the level that ICE detention requires. Many times the request we hear from local or state law enforcement or prison systems that want to help facilitate the detention of illegal criminals, such as we're addressing right now, are asking us to relax our federal standards so that they qualify, are asking us for more latitude. So our standards
I was
have
just
been
there. I can
in the
tell you they were not
contracts.
asking that
Yeah,
in Berlin.
they may not have been up at your facility, but what I would say is that all of those boxes have to be checked and staffing requirements have to be met in order for that contract to be facilitated and utilized.
Well, what I heard is that we have trouble attracting people, corrections officers, other staff that we need, psychologists and medical staff. And so I think it's absolutely critical that we ensure that if ICE is going to use those facilities, that the funding is there to provide adequate staffing.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I have another issue, and I'm out of time, but I just want to put on your radar screen that we appropriated $200 million to recapitalize facilities for the Coast Guard. One of those facilities that was damaged in storms is in Newcastle, New Hampshire. It's a facility that serves the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. It's critical to national security. I hope you will work with us to ensure that the funding goes to help rebuild those facilities that need it.
Yeah, we'll certainly take a look at that. As you know, we've proposed a new investment and future for the Coast Guard called Force Design 2028. And so we're excited about that because it recognizes the deficiencies that the Coast Guard has had to live with for far too long. It adds 15,000 coasties to the force. It also addresses not just cutters and not just airframe, but also infrastructure. What we need for buildings and for docks and for abilities to ports and infrastructure to really facilitate what they really provide for us. They are also a key part of not just search and rescue, but also our interdiction efforts right now as well. And we're not keeping up with the cartels out on the water.
I'm a big fan. I just don't want us to divert that funding.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for our time in my office. Governor, I'm a former CIA officer, joined right after 9/11, and served 3 tours in Iraq alongside the military. I'm actually the first CIA officer in the Senate. To me, the most important thing, again, as a Democrat from a state that Trump won, right, on the same ballot, we both won, I understand we're going to have different policy opinions. I certainly understand that the president or incoming president has the right to nominate whoever he wants. Those are not the issues for me that I'm going to spend my time on. The ones that I care about the most relate to the mission of the organization when it was founded, protecting the homeland. And I think, to me, it's one thing when there's campaign rhetoric or politicization of things. Everyone does that on both sides of the aisle in this committee and in our line of work. But when it comes to actually protecting the country, you do have to be clear and honest about facts and not conflate things. So it's just important to me that I know, particularly since you do have one of the intelligence agencies within the Department of Homeland Security, that you're going to call a spade, right? The most recent acts of domestic terrorism in New Orleans, horrible incident, in Nevada, had nothing to do with migrants, correct?
Correct.
They were homegrown American citizens. One of them was actually in a very elite military unit. I mean, it's horrible. It's one of the hardest things to catch, the sort of lone wolf, radicalized American citizen. But I want to protect ourselves. Our most recent examples of domestic terrorism were not what we've spent the majority talking about today, crime from a migrant. And I don't dispute there is crime. But I just want to know, and I want to hear from you as an intelligence officer, that you're going to speak about real threats and not blow something up, politicize something, make something more exciting, because that's maybe what the president wants to hear. But your mission to protect and defend the Constitution means calling honestly what the threats are to the country. Can you just give me a yes or no, please?
Yes, Senator, I will be as transparent and factual every day with you and the American people as possible based on the information that I have. I don't know if the investigations are closed in New Orleans and in Nevada, but what we know so far and needs to be relayed to the American people needs to be the truth and facts.
Yeah, I'd ask that. We've talked a lot about border security. As a CIA officer, I think one of the only people on this committee who's actually worked on protecting the homeland. I'm a Middle East terrorism and militia expert by training, so I believe deeply in it. And every country of the world gets to decide who comes inside its borders. That's not a radical concept. But I think I've been open with this committee that it is also on us to fix the deeply broken legal immigration system. I'm glad to hear that you're going to carry out the laws on the immigration system. Democrats and Republicans are to blame that we haven't fixed this system. But I also believe you can't fully control the border unless you give people that we need for our companies, for our economy, a legal vetted way to come here. So do you believe in legal vetted immigration and that we need more of it in the United States?
I do believe we need to follow our legal immigration laws and that it needs to be vetted. We need more resources, I believe, in some of the elements of this to ensure
Do you believe that our economy depends and needs some level, just like your family came from Norway and on economic, drive and wanted a better life?
Immigration's always been a part of our history and will be a part of our future. We just need to make sure that we're adhering to our nation's laws, which this body has the ability to.
I'm with you.
Continue to change and to put in place.
Again, going back to the fact that you will pledge an oath to the Constitution, not to President Trump, just like every other nominee. President Trump said in November that he is willing to use law enforcement, National Guard, or even active duty military to go after, quote, the threat from within the United States. I don't know exactly what he was talking about. But we have recent examples from your predecessors at DHS where federal law enforcement were sent into a state, in this case, Oregon, without coordination with the governor. Those federal law enforcement officers at the time were putting down threats to federal buildings, and they were legitimate threats. I don't dispute there was destruction of property going on during a bunch of protests and riots. So I don't dispute that, but they weren't wearing insignia. We talked about this. They weren't wearing any markings. So people were arrested by folks in fatigues with no names, no idea who they were, like right out of a bad Hollywood movie, okay? If the president asks you to send in federal law enforcement to a state without coordination of that governor, would you support that action?
You know, Senator, my job, if nominated and sworn in as Secretary of Homeland Security, is to uphold the Constitution and to
So you will
uphold
push
the rules
back?
of this country. Yes, that will be the oath and the pledge that I will be making. And my goal also is to work with you to ensure that we have situations that are always appropriate, that we are well defined on
I just
who we
need to know,
are.
you're a former governor. You can imagine that if Joe Biden sent in 700 federal law enforcement under Secretary Mayorkas without coordinating with you, I think we can agree you'd be a little upset. So I just ask that you give the same respect for coordination, and that we are very sensitive. People are worried about politicizing of law enforcement and the uniformed military. That's a bad thing. I hope we can agree. Lastly, I will just say, look forward to looking at the northern border, the Gordie Howe Bridge, your help staffing that. We know you aren't, right now, across many administrations, we haven't met our staffing goals at DHS, and that's a problem, so we really want to make sure that opens on time. But I also want your assurances, you know, you received FEMA assistance from Joe Biden's administration, right? You had historic floods, you asked and requested of the administration, and you were given millions of dollars to help with that. I understand you don't like Gavin Newsom, but can you say in front of the American people that you will open the books to this committee, who does have oversight over FEMA, right? That you will open the books in a bipartisan way to ensure, whether it's North Carolina or California or anywhere in between, that the American people can know that you are not playing politics with disaster assistance?
Yes, Senator, I'll work with you and this committee to make sure I'm following the federal law and ensuring that you have information and transparency from us and from DHS and FEMA.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yield back.
Senator Langford.
Governor Noem, great to see you.
Great to see you, too.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for accepting this nod that the president has given you. For Brian, thanks. Both of you, you've walked through a lot. I have had the privilege of knowing you for a very long time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Secretary. Secretary Noem, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff recently said that the Trump administration is actively looking at suspending habeas corpus. Last week, you were asked about this, and I want to clarify your position because it's obviously really important to get this right. So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right
let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President Lincoln used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea. As a senator from the Live Free or Die state, this matters a lot to me and my constituents and to all Americans. So, Secretary Noem, do you support the core protection that habeas corpus provides, that the government must provide a public reason in order to detain and imprison someone?
Yeah, I support habeas corpus. I also recognize that the President of the United States has the authority under the Constitution to decide if it should be suspended or not.
It has never
Let
been,
us be clear, though,
it
that
has
this
never
president,
been done. It has never been done without approval of Congress. Even Abraham Lincoln got retroactive approval from Congress. So I have been asking executive branch nominees a simple question over the past few months. If the president orders them to break the law, I've been asking, will you follow the law or follow the order? I want to ask you a more specific question here. If the president tries to suspend habeas corpus and a federal court reverses the president's order, will you comply with the court order and uphold habeas corpus, or will you follow the president's directive?
We are following all federal court orders and are complying with that, as is the president, and every decision that I make as well.
That is obviously not true for anybody who reads the news. There are federal court orders right now, including returning somebody who was deported mistakenly. But to be clear, this is about a fundamental legal right that ensures that we live in a free society instead of a police state that would have a sham legal system like Russia or North Korea. So I'm glad that you have now committed to following court orders. I'm glad you believe in the basic freedom for Americans if ordered to do so by a court. And again, I want just to make clear that it is critically important that even if the president tries to suspend the right of people to know why they've been detained or imprisoned, if a federal court reverses that order, that you will follow that order. And I hope all the members of the administration will, because it's obviously critical that some of the people, for instance, who've been deported by mistake, who didn't get due process, be returned in compliance with court orders. So now, let's move on to another issue. International criminal organizations target Americans with sophisticated cyber crime, including elaborate scams that robbed Americans of billions of dollars, with seniors in the United States losing $5 billion to scammers in 2024 alone. As artificial intelligence improves, so does the ability of criminals to deceive and defraud Americans. With this new technology, criminals can impersonate loved ones, develop advanced malware, or make more convincing phishing messages. How is DHS working to identify trends in illegal activity and ensure that new AI systems have safeguards in place to prevent their use in criminal activity?
Yes, we are working extensively through CISA, but in all of our agencies to make sure that we're going after these criminal, nefarious actors. I would say partnering with private industry is critically important so that we have the insight that we need to really understand the tactics that they use and the advancements in software. The AI ability that they have to adjust and to supersede some of our systems is incredible. And so investing in those systems is important, but also having the knowledge and bringing everybody to the table and breaking down the silos between our agencies and our intelligence agencies is important, so we all have the information that we need to get.
Well, and that gets me to one final point and question here, because Senator Peters began to ask about it. There's been recent reporting that indicates that the Chinese government installed remote access to Chinese-made power inverters in the U.S., raising concerns that the Chinese government could try to disable parts of our power grid. And you made a comment following up on Senator Peters' question about the importance of not only working with private industry on this issue, as you would also want to work on AI, but also on working with state and local governments on cybersecurity. And can you just talk to me a little bit about how DHS is partnering with state and local governments right now on cyber?
Well, that's one of the core critical missions of CISA, is to help those state and local governments harden their systems. We're extremely vulnerable by our weakest link. And so when you have a small state that doesn't have the resources it needs to invest in these security operations, then they're vulnerable to attacks and hacking attempts, and they can access our systems. If they have a contract or a system that interfaces with the federal system, it makes us vulnerable as well. So we are responsible for 10 of the 16 critical infrastructures under the Department of Homeland Security, and making sure that China can't come in and shut down our electrical grid, our water systems, things that people rely on every day for their day-to-day lives is very important. So that's why we need these kind of partnerships, is to make sure that we're secure all the way down to our smallest actor that participates.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate working more with you on that. Thank you.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Governor, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming before our committee. I wanted to just ask you, not just about your work, but how it's going to fit into the broader incoming Trump administration. And in particular, I guess I'm uncertain about roles and responsibilities regarding your position and Tom Homan's. I guess I just want to ask you, just point blank, like, who's going to be in charge of the border?
Well, the president will be in charge of the border. It's a national security issue, and the president is in charge of this country and has made a promise to the American people, and we will fulfill his agenda.
Well, that was a good answer. It's the answer I would have given as well. But I guess I got confused. When Trump made the announcement about Tom Homan, he said, quote, I'm pleased to announce that Tom Homan, and said that he's in charge of our nation's borders. So I guess, again, I'd just like to go back to you. How are you going to work with Mr. Homan? What is the division there? I'm trying to get a better sense of who's in charge.
Yeah, Tom Homan is an incredible human being who has over 30 years of experience.
Incredible experience.
Yeah,
I get
at
that.
the border,
I'm just trying to think through
the insight and wisdom.
Decision-making process when it comes to your work. For instance, will he be giving orders directly to CBP, ICE, USCIS?
Tom Homan has a direct line to the president. He is an advisor to the president, the border czar. I obviously will be, if nominated and confirmed, and put into the position of being the Department of Homeland Security Secretary and responsible for the authorities that we have and the actions that we take.
I say this because I actually want to make sure that we're empowering the next Secretary of Homeland Security.
Yes.
You know, in the legislation that was codified by Congress and moved forward that started this after September 11th, it said, quote, all functions of all offices, employees, and organizational units of the department are vested in the Secretary. So I guess the reason why I mentioned this is I've just seen some quotes from Mr. Homan where he said, quote, I'll be making decisions on border security and deportation. He was asked in another interview about the stronger role that he'll play, and he said, absolutely, I'll be making decisions on how we do the border. So I just raise that as a concern of mine, because not only is that about the function of our executive branch, but also the capabilities of this committee to be able to properly do our constitutional duties for oversight, the ability for us to be able to have that conversation. We can talk to you, engage with you. That is the direct way. But if he is going to be making decisions, then he should come before this committee as well. And I know that that's something where, as far as I know, his role will be directly at the White House, is not something that will be under the purview directly of this committee. So I just wanted to raise those concerns.
Yeah, Tom and I work very well together and talk and communicate all the time, and we'll be working together on a daily basis when we're in our positions under the new administration. And I would say there's no authorities being planned to be taken away from the department or myself if I'm in the role, and
But
we'll
it sends
continue
some
to
mixed
oversee
signals.
CBP.
You can understand how people in my home state, maybe around the country, when they hear Mr. Homan saying, I'm making the decisions, when they hear President-elect Trump say he's in charge of our border. So, I urge, that we're going to try to do our best to try to make sure we're empowering the department, empowering the next secretary, because that's where, our laws are invested in our decision making.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Senator, and we'll make sure you have all the information that you need. And Tom working directly with the president and I working directly with the president hope to help you get all that you need to reassured that the authorities will stay the same as they currently are, but we will continue to work to secure that border and make sure that we're working together in that way.
I want to just switch gears about you raised the concerns about terrorism, especially foreign terrorist groups. I guess I just want to ask you, what are the major foreign terrorist groups that are, well, first of all, what are the major foreign terrorist groups that are out there that we're tracking? Which are the ones that are concerns to us in terms of potentially trying to inspire or coordinate an attack upon us? And if you can just give me a sense of what their current capabilities are to try to enact that.
Well, I think we face a lot of threats, Senator, and since I'm not in the role today, I shouldn't get into specifics with you, but I think
you can at least get into specifics about what organizations that are out there.
Yes,
so I just wanted to get a sense of
we
your
have
knowledge of the
all the
organizations.
traditional terrorist organizations that have always threatened the United States,
Such
but I would
as?
also say, I would say Hamas, ISIS, continuing down that path of those terrorist organizations, but we'll continue to also focus, though, not just on those, but also the cartels, their partnership with the Chinese, and what they are doing. Listen, I've told people for years, for over 30 years, I've worked on national policy, on food policy, on agriculture policy, and I've seen the Chinese agenda to infiltrate our country, control our food supply chain, but also their manipulation of their currency and stealing our IP. And now I believe that this fentanyl crisis that they have flooded our country with is geared, and the purpose of it is to kill our next generation of Americans.
No,
It is to
I
control
don't
us.
discount the
So
importance
when you
of those.
focus on one or two groups, I think it takes your eye off the ball as to where all the threats could come from. We just spent a significant amount of time talking about homegrown terrorism as well.
Correct. And I'm glad we're having that conversation. But the reason why I mentioned it, I was not trying to quiz you or anything of that nature. It's just that, you know, when the Department of Homeland Security, when their threat assessment for 2025 lists 3 organizations, lists Al-Qaeda, lists ISIS, in particular ISIS Khorasan, and the IRGC and the threat from Iran. I just want to make sure that I get it. You know, you're talking about the importance of the border. We all understand that. We want to work with the incoming administration to try to have an orderly process with that. But I just want to make sure that in particular DHS, the primary mission, you know, if we look at the founding legislation, the primary mission, the very first mission is prevent terrorist attacks within the United States and do everything we can to minimize that type of threat. So, yes, I do think it's important for us to focus in on 1, 2, or 3, or just wherever these terrorist groups are at. Yes, I know that part of that effort to try to minimize terrorist attacks is through the work that we try to do to secure our borders, all of them, air, sea, and land. But the primary mission still is about preventing terrorism, not just the border security. That's a tool to be able to accomplish that. So I just raise that with you. I want to make sure that the next Homeland Security Secretary has a very detailed knowledge and understanding about the terrorist groups, their capabilities, and is tracking that on an absolute daily basis, and that they understand that is their top mission. And with that, I'll yield back to the chairman.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing to conduct oversight of the Department of Homeland Security, and welcome Secretary Noem to your first hearing here. On this subcommittee, our job is to keep our country safe and to safeguard our values as Americans. Last year, working together, we secured consistent increases for border operations funding and helped bring encounters at the southern border down and seizures of narcotics, including fentanyl, up through critical investments at our ports of entry, CBP officers, and increases to Homeland Security investigations. Normally, I would focus my questions for the Secretary on the details of the President's budget, but I would be remiss if I did not mention that we are holding today's hearing without an actual budget for fiscal year 2026 to review. And the skinny budget released last Friday is filled more with politics than facts. So let me begin with some facts that I think are important for the American people to hear about what you're doing with their money. Because 3 months into this administration, America is more vulnerable than it's ever been. Our homeland is not secure. In the first 100 days of the Trump administration, you have slashed our nation's cyber defenses, letting Russia, China, and Iran steal our top secrets and Americans' personal data. You've wasted hundreds of millions of dollars on illegal detention and deportation, including some people who are trying to come into this country, quote, the legal way within our broken immigration system, despite, by the department's own admission, southern border encounters already at record lows. Sent emails to U.S. citizens that read, please leave the United States immediately. Removed U.S. citizen children, including those with terminal illnesses. Raised the price tag of future disasters by cutting billions from projects across the country to make our infrastructure more resilient, including a bipartisan program that was enacted into law by President Trump himself, and taken millions of dollars away from the DHS workforce and operations for what appears to be taxpayer-funded political advertisements. During our Member Day hearing last month, I also raised the unacceptable and unconstitutional decisions this administration has been making with the funds provided to the department by this committee, including the sudden and unexplained termination of DHS grants to states, universities, and nonprofit organizations, the cancellation of the Disaster Relief Fund's BRIC program, violations of the Fifth Amendment right to due process enshrined in the Constitution, and reductions in force of parts of the department's Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, Office of Citizenship and Immigration Services Ombudsman, as well as the Office of the Immigration Detention Ombudsman. I also have serious concerns with the administration's decision to revoke the bargaining rights for DHS personnel, with an exception made for unions that have vocally supported the president in the name of efficiency and combating waste, fraud, and abuse, but without any evidence to back those claims. Mr. Chairman, these are programs that Congress debated and ultimately funded. Our role as appropriators is to write the law and responsibly fund the government, and the executive's role is to execute that funding pursuant to the law. It is no secret the administration has ramped up immigration detention beyond what Congress funded. Increases to ICE at the expense of other national security programs and initiatives that members on both sides of the aisle voted for undermines our core work and congressional intent. DHS is cashing checks it simply doesn't have in hopes that reconciliation passes and will cover their shortfall. That is an incredibly risky strategy and only sets up essential national security agencies for failure or violations of the Anti-Deficiency Act. How does that secure the homeland? There have been bipartisan discussions surrounding the organizational structure of the Department of Homeland Security, whether it's making FEMA an independent agency or transferring components like the U.S. Coast Guard or the U.S. Secret Service to other departments. We will never shy away from discussions about how we can improve the department, but absent an enacted law from Congress making changes to the department's organizational structure, this subcommittee will continue to conduct oversight over all existing DHS components and provide for their continued funding in the Homeland Security bill. I know that there are many areas in this bill that share bipartisan support, and I am so proud of the relationship that Chairman Amodei and I have built. I know that even in this highly partisan environment, he and I are committed to welcoming ideas for how to improve the department and better manage the department. But the Trump administration's actions have pushed us to unprecedented and to a sobering moment. America is a democracy, not a dictatorship. In a democracy, we are organized around the rule of law, and those laws are based on a core set of constitutional rights. You may be familiar with the Bill of Rights. It includes the Fourth Amendment, which forbids unreasonable searches and seizures, the Fifth Amendment, which guarantees the right to due process, and the Sixth Amendment, which protects the right to a fair trial and legal counsel. As we endeavor to secure the homeland, we must continue to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. That is not a secondary mission. Let me conclude and take a moment to recognize the dedication and commitment of the women and men of the Department of Homeland Security who carry out the department's vital missions that help protect the American people from a wide range of threats. Again, I want to thank the chairman for holding this hearing. Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with you on a bill that reflects those shared priorities, keeps our country safe, and upholds our shared values as Americans. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, thank you for being here again before the committee today. I also appreciated the time we spent yesterday morning on the phone discussing a variety of issues, and I look forward to those kinds of discussions continuing in the future. As you know, the protections for sharing information under the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015, confusingly referred to as CISA 2015, but it deals with the information sharing, expires at the end of September. This is a critical authority that applies to information sharing across the federal government, not only to CISA, the agency, but it also allows the agency the ability to have robust and timely cyber threat information shared between public and private sectors, as well as among private sector companies, so folks have an understanding of the threat landscape that's out there and have full awareness of what's coming at them by nefarious actors. Does the administration support the extension of this incredibly important authority that I've been hearing about from a number of stakeholders that they're very concerned it's going to expire? Does the administration support the extension?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Senator Peters. It's a very important piece of legislation. Does endorse it for 10 more years, which I think is a long enough time frame for us to really make sure that we have the stability we need in this area to create those kind of partnerships you were talking about with private industry. We need their expertise and their knowledge and their interaction with those across the world that hate the United States of America to come in and cooperate with us to make sure we're prepared to secure our systems and our critical infrastructure.
Great. Well, I look forward to your support, the administration's support, so we can pass this extension, a 10-year extension, before it expires. You're absolutely right how critical it is. Secretary Noem, I'm also concerned about the increasing number of security threats that we're seeing from drone incursions to public spaces, to airports, critical infrastructure sites all across our country, as we spoke about yesterday morning. Just last week, a man in Michigan was arrested after he allegedly tried to attack the U.S. Army's Tank Automotive and Armaments Command facility at the Detroit Arsenal in Warren. According to prosecutors, the man flew a drone over the facility to conduct operational reconnaissance, further highlighting the need to ensure that law enforcement is properly resourced to deal with this growing threat. While I understand that there are safety concerns with the technology that need to be addressed by the FAA, I would like for all of us to work together to reauthorize DHS and DOJ's counter-drone authorities that also expire at the end of September, because this threat, as you know, is not going away. Last Congress, Senator Johnson and I introduced a bill, S-1631, that I think is a good starting point. So my question for you, Secretary Noem, is can I get your commitment that we can work together to not only reauthorize these authorities on a long-term basis, but actually strengthen those authorities to make sure we deal with this persistent threat?
Yes, Senator Peters, I'll take a look at your legislation specifically, but we do need to reauthorize the authorities that we do have in order to address not just our Homeland Security day-to-day activities, but we're hosting some very large events in this country that will, I think, challenge our ability to secure that many large events at one time. So having those kind of authorities and addressing what we can do to cooperate with states and local governments and cities in locations where big events happen would be very important to do that. So you're right, the expansion of those authorities needs to be looked at to make sure it's appropriate, but also gives us the tools we need to keep people safe. We've got the Club Cup coming this summer, the World Cup next summer, which will be 10 million ticketed people, 22 million people that will be involved in the activities surrounding it. The Olympics coming. That's important we address this now so we can be proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. Senator Johnson and I would appreciate it. And our biggest supporter for our bill is actually the National Football League, who have real concerns about their games. We've already had games interrupted, and it could be more serious at some point. Secretary Noem, 2 weeks ago during a Senate appropriations hearing, you told me very clearly to the questions that I had that CISA was, quote, back on mission, end of quote. If this is accurate, my question is, why is the administration proposing to cut $500 million from an agency's budget for an agency that's on mission right now, when those activities you previously described as off mission, specifically election security work, cost about $20 million. Those folks have been let go. They're no longer there. I can understand a cut of $20 million, but this is a cut of $500 million. So specific, if you could tell this committee what specific activities or departments at CISA does the department plan to cut as a result of these very large proposed cuts? And if you could please give some specific examples of offices and programs. And as you know, the CISA's statutory requirements are extensive. You have a lot on your plate. You have a lot to cover. You need to have resources to do that. But this is a pretty significant cut in funding, and we need to know exactly what protection will not be offered after these cuts go into effect.
Yeah, we will continue to fulfill all the statutory requirements that the Department of Homeland Security has and has given to CISA as in the work that it does. Putting it back on mission means that it fulfills the responsibility of why it was created, and that's to be the cybersecurity agency of the nation, to go out and secure our critical infrastructure, work with small and medium-sized businesses and states and localities to give them the insight and wisdom they need to make sure that they're not vulnerable to hackers or nefarious activity. Getting rid of censorship, getting rid of the Ministry of Truth at CISA, the employees that were duplicative, that were fulfilling roles that wasn't related to cybersecurity was something that we addressed. I would say under the president's budget, cybersecurity is only strengthened, and we're doubling down on the need to build private and partner with those individual industries that have the expertise and knowledge that we've lacked for so long. And they're looking for some more abilities to do new things for this country as far as giving us insight into nefarious activities. But they do ask that we give them some level of protection from liabilities. And I think you're very familiar with some of their concerns. I want to work with you to see what we can do to address those needs so that we can have the information we need to really, truly secure the country. One of the biggest alarming things, and I think I visited with you about this before, was that we still don't necessarily know how to stop the next Volt typhoon. And private industry can help us with that, with their knowledge. They see things that we don't, and that partnership could be strong and make sure that we're not just spending more dollars with no means to an end, that we actually have an end that relies and ends with a more secure United States of America.
I look forward to working with you on that. Thank you.
You bet.
Senator Johnson.
Thanks, Senator Johnson. Welcome, Governor Noem, and thank you for being here. Thank you for visiting with me, and thank you to your family for their service as well. Let me begin on a high note, thanking Senator Hawley for his leadership on the effort that I led with him to essentially get some basic facts out of the Secret Service when we were investigating, Senator Johnson and I, as leaders of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation, helping to lead it with the chairman and ranking member here. And I'm hoping that you've read our report and that you will agree to begin implementing its recommendations, which call for major reforms, in my view, a house cleaning top to bottom in the Secret Service, and greater transparency with this committee and with the American public.
Yes, sir. I will certainly work with you to do that and to work to make sure that we have that transparency and the committee has the information that it needs to do due diligence of its oversight.
Our investigation is continuing.
Yep.
Senator Johnson and I have discussed it, and we will be making more requests to pursue the fact-finding that is so important. I want to ask you about disaster relief. California is on fire. The fires raging there are going to leave destruction and devastation that is heartbreaking. I am really disappointed with some of the statements that President-elect Trump has made. For example, saying that, quote, we won't give him, referring to Governor Newsom, money to put out all his fires, and if we don't give him money to put out fires, he's got a problem. The specter is there of potential discrimination based on politics, withholding money from California or other states. It's not an unfounded fear. In the last administration, there were public reports about President Trump withholding money from the state of Washington because of his disagreements with Governor Inslee. Connecticut, like the rest of the nation, suffers from these natural disasters. Most recently, in August, we were hit by major flooding, and these natural disasters are going to become more frequent, as will be the need for the federal government to meet the requests for declarations of natural disaster. I assume you will agree with me that withholding disaster relief by President Trump or any other chief executive of the United States is a violation of his duty and of law.
Well, Senator, leadership has consequences. And looking at the tragedy that's happening in California,
I want to ask you yes or no, with all due respect. It's an easy...
What's happening in California is the ramification of many decisions over many years. But under my leadership at the Department of Homeland Security, there will be no political bias to how disaster relief is delivered to the American people.
So if President Trump were to say to you, we're going to withhold money from Connecticut or Michigan or any of the states, Iowa, because we don't like the governor or we don't like the politics of the state, you would stand up to him and say, Mr. President, we need to allocate that money.
Well, Senator, in 3 days, President Trump will take an oath to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law in this country, and he will do that, and I'll be glad to have him back.
And I
don't
assume
I
that's
don't
a
speak
yes.
to hypotheticals, which is what you're asking me to do, but what I will tell you is that as Secretary, I will do the same. I will deliver the programs as the
Well, it's more
laws
than a
dictate.
hypothetical, with all due respect, and I apologize for interrupting you, but my time is limited, as you know, as a veteran of these hearings. It's more than a hypothetical. It's based on experience with President Trump withholding money from Washington State and elsewhere. I need to know from you, will you stand up to the President and say, no, the Constitution and the Impoundment Act requires us, for example, to allocate the $100 billion that we have just appropriated in the last session to states like Connecticut, $3 million, Texas, $10 million, almost every one of the states represented here. Will you say no to the President if he withholds that money?
Sir, I don't know about the scenarios that you're referencing with President Trump, but what I will tell you is that if given the chance to be Secretary of Homeland Security, that I will deliver the programs according to the law and that it will be done with no political bias. And if the programs change, or if you decide to change the rule of law, then I will follow that while adhering to the Constitution.
So you pledge to allocate and distribute that $100 billion
according to how the program is written, with no political bias. Every American deserves to be there and have disaster relief the same as their neighbors.
basically following the law.
Yes.
Let me ask you, Senator Peters asked you about homegrown terrorists. The New Orleans tragedy was the result of a homegrown terrorist born in this country, radicalized by ISIS. And it reflects the reason why the intelligence community, the FBI, almost all of our law enforcement has said repeatedly, domestic violent extremism is the most lethal and persistent threat to our security. That terrorist was radicalized by ISIS. The investigation is underway. We don't know all the facts, but we do know that he was a military veteran, and ISIS was responsible for radicalizing him. Shouldn't we focus on ISIS as a threat to this country's security?
Senator, certainly we should be focused on all threats to this nation's security. That's the mission of the Department of Homeland Security, and homegrown terrorism is growing. We have more and more incidences. The tragedy we saw and the terrorist attack in New Orleans.
What will you do to combat it? What will you do to stop ISIS and other extremist organizations from radicalizing people in this country?
Well, certainly, Senator, I'll continue to work with the administration and our partners and the Department of Defense, the intelligence agencies, also within Secretary of State and the other branches and cabinet officials to make sure we're bringing all resources to bear to identify and to stop these types of terrorist activities. What I would say is the cybersecurity and intelligence elements that we have within the Department of Homeland Security have been incredibly siloed. They have not communicated with other intelligence agencies like they should and partnered. INA has some interaction, but not enough. And we also need to have CISA have interaction with the FBI, CIA to make sure they're working together to stop these types of threats and identify when they're growing among our citizens and how they become radicalized.
Expired. This area of questioning, I think, is supremely important. I know there's a lot of focus on the border. We all want more border security. We want to stop migrant crime, but let's not take our eye off the ball. The governor of Louisiana for the Super Bowl ought to be really riveted on the potential for homegrown terrorism as a threat. And I hope that you will help him and other governors to do their duty to protect the people of the United States from that homegrown terrorist threat.
His time has expired. I now recognize Mr. Swalwell for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. You have an important job. I think you have one of the most important jobs in the cabinet. Thank you for doing it. I want you to have credibility and be taken seriously as you do the job. And so I want to put to rest this question about Mr. Garcia in this photo that the president posted on April 21. Madam Secretary, you agree that the letters MS and the number 13 in Times Roman numeral font, that they are doctored on this photo, right?
Congressman Abrego Garcia.
No, I'm just asking about this photo.
It wasn't based off of tattoos. It was based off an entire case.
And I'll accept that
case against him.
for the purpose of this question. You agree, though, that this is doctored, is that right?
The same protocols that are
Madam
applied
Secretary,
to every
I want you to have
individual with law
credibility, and
enforcement.
I want you to be taken seriously. Is this doctored or is it not
Sir, I am
doctored?
taken quite seriously
Is it
because
doctored
I approach
or
my
not
job
doctored?
with the importance that the president has given me to do
I understand.
my job.
Is it doctored or
One
not
thing
doctored?
that's important to remember is that every single time a case is built.
Madam
against
Secretary, I have a
individuals in the
7-year-old, a
same
6-year-old, and a
protocols.
3-year-old. I have a bullshit detector. I'm just asking you, is this doctored or not doctored?
Sir, the protocols in the case built against
Can you
Abrego
answer the
Garcia
question?
were exactly the same.
Madam Secretary,
I don't have
you're-
any knowledge as to that photo you're pointing to.
Okay, can you
I
take
don't,
her,
sir.
can you show her the photo? Walk her the photo down there. No, that one. Please take a look at this photo. It was tweeted by the president on April 21. It's been hanging out there for about a month.
So what is your point?
My question is, the numbers and the letter, MS-13, could you look at the photo, please? It's right in front of
Are
you.
you saying Abrego Garcia is not a wife
No,
beater?
no, ma'am.
That he's not a criminal?
Ma'am,
He's not a human trafficker, and
ma'am,
he's not a member of MS.
You vouched for Mr. Garcia when
You're
your team
vouching for
said,
a man
ma'am, you
that is
vouched
a
for him when
known
you said he
violent
was mistakenly deported.
Sir,
I didn't vouch for him.
I did not say
In
that.
that
He
photo,
should have been deported. Absolutely.
It's so
There was
telling
never a
that you
mistake
won't look at the
deporting,
photo.
And we will not be bringing
Was
him back
it
to
doctored or not?
in staying here. If
Can
he
you
comes
look to
back
your
the
right
country, he
at
would
the
be
photo in
deported
front
right
of you?
away.
Madam Secretary, can you look to the right at the photo in front of you?
I have seen this
Okay.
photo as you held it behind your head.
Thank you. And the letters MS and the numbers 13, are those
Is
doctored
this your
or
entire
not?
testimony today is on a doctored photo? You don't want to talk about the facts?
Okay,
The
so you-
importance of our national security?
You acknowledge
What we
it was
do
doctored.
To make sure that the United States is protected.
Madam
and
Secretary,
from
this is not a
violent
hard question.
criminals?
Are those doctored or not?
Sir,
is that actually on his hand or not?
This is unbelievable to me that you're focused.
It's unbelievable to me that you can't look at the photo and tell the American
I looked
people.
at the photo, but I don't have any knowledge as to this photo.
Okay, so it's been hanging out there for 4 weeks. You are one of the chief law enforcement officials in the country. What have you done to investigate whether the president misrepresented the reason that that person has been detained?
Sir,
have
we
you
spend our
done
time-
anything to try and figure out whether that was doctored or not?
The mission of the Department of Homeland Security is to secure our nation and to make sure that we're out there going after those that are the worst of the worst, the criminals, the bad actors. Abrego
Yes.
Garcia.
So the answer is
a
you've done
known
nothing to
terrorist,
correct the
member
president.
of MS-13, a wife
Okay.
beater and a human
Okay.
trafficker that should never have been in this country to begin with.
So, Madam Secretary, thank you, Mr. Burnett. 2 weeks ago, your agency deported a 4-year-old American citizen in a stage 4 cancer battle. What are you doing to get him back to the country so he can get his treatment?
Congressman, this mother wished to keep her family together and to take her child with her. So as every single person is given the opportunity to, medical care is given throughout the process.
So it sounds like
And for this
nothing.
child, medical care was confirmed in their home country so that it would continue, and those treatments and whatever needs were needed to be had into the future were confirmed to be provided there before.
That child's home country is the United States. Do you believe you have a right to deport a U.S. citizen?
That mother chose to keep her family together, and that is what President Trump is
that's-
focused on. And
that's
making
not the
sure
facts of the case.
that- yes, it is the facts.
Madam
This
Secretary,
mother
moving on, do you,
confirmed that she wanted to
do
keep
you
her
have a
child
right?
with her, and our families and parents are given that ability to keep their children with them when they return to their home countries.
Madam Secretary, do you have a right to deport a U.S. citizen?
No, we do not deport U.S. citizens and have not deported U.S. citizens.
Except the 4-year-old that we just
No,
referenced.
that mother chose to keep her child with her, and that is her prerogative, and the law was followed in allowing her the opportunity to do that.
So, Madam Secretary, I'm a former prosecutor. I have put people away for life sentences who are gang members. I don't need to wear costumes to show how tough I am. What makes me different from you is when I put those individuals away, I did it with the weight of the law behind me. And I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields.
I ask unanimous consent to enter an article from Fox 45 that states documents reveal a second protective order filed by the White
Commitment to be inside my 5 minutes. I will now yield to the ranking member for his 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Department of Homeland Security has been the top target on the Donald Trump's revenge tour, and you, Madam Secretary, are the chief accomplice. The Trump administration is hell-bent on destroying the Department of Homeland Security, built through bipartisan collaboration over the past 2 decades and evading any accountability for its actions. Let's start with what the administration is doing to FEMA. Madam Secretary, you said that you want to get rid of FEMA, and the administration plan is to shirk its disaster response obligation and leave state and local governments to fend for themselves. Emergency managers across the country are sounding the alarm about the limited ability to respond when disasters strike, but their calls are falling on deaf ears from the White House. What is the administration's plan to respond to catastrophic disasters beyond shifting responsibilities to states and local communities who are already telling you they don't have the ability to respond?
Well, Congressman, President Trump has been very clear that he believes that FEMA should be eliminated as it exists today. He believes there's dramatic reforms that need to happen to the agency in order for it to truly serve people in a time of crisis. He wants to empower states and local governments to respond to their people. The federal government would be there for resources, support, much like block grants, but that we need to empower those locally to respond to their people because they know what they need. That is something that every state is at a different position today to respond, but he wants to give them the opportunity to build up the infrastructure to respond to their emergency.
Madam Secretary, do you have this plan in writing?
The White House is coming forward with the participation of the FEMA Review Council, which we have members from many states that are sitting on that will be making recommendations.
So what you're doing now, there's nothing in writing as a guidepost.
Well, sir, you certainly know that there are reform bills here in the House side and in the Senate side of how to address the failures of FEMA from the past.
No, but you the secretary.
Those will be considered with the FEMA Review Council recommendations.
No, you're the secretary, and you say you're doing all these things. And I'm just asking you, do you have a written plan for what you're doing?
There is no formalized final plan for how this goes forward because the input of Congress is critically important. As you know, there are statutory requirements of the agency.
Well, I'm glad you recognize,
that needs to be
Madam Secretary, I'm glad you recognize the statutory requirements. Washington State, Mississippi, and a couple other states already have requests in to you or to the president for disaster declaration, and it's taken an inordinate amount of time, more than normal. I just want to know, is that inordinate amount of time is based on some plan that you have knowledge of? But if it's not in writing, I understand. So you talked about the rule of law. Are you telling the committee that due process for anybody that's picked up in this country should not be followed?
Congressman, we have utilized due process as it is laid out in the tools that Congress has given us. We have followed the tools and the processes to which Congress has given us to give due process to people appropriately as it is due.
So your testimony to this committee under oath is that everybody that ICE has picked up in this country has been given every opportunity as Section 5 under the Constitution provides.
Correct. I believe everybody has gotten due process and every person has been treated appropriately according to the civil or the criminal action to which they were encountering individuals and brought into our detainment and then also removed from this country.
So your answer is yes.
The tools that you have given us as this
I'm
body
talking about the
for due
Constitution
process
of the
have been
United
implemented.
States. I'm not talking about tools. The Constitution is clear.
Correct.
And your testimony under oath to this committee is that everybody that ICE has picked up and any other agency of DHS has conformed to those statutes.
For example, Congressman,
No,
expedited
yes or
removal.
no? No, I don't need an
Expedited
example.
removal is one of the
Madam
tools that
Secretary,
you have
I
given
got
us to
4
utilize
seconds.
as due process.
I just need a yes or no.
Sir, that is the due process tool that you have given us to utilize that has been appropriately.
So obviously.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now
I have a
recognize
unanimous
Mr.
consent request, Chairman.
I'm sorry?
I have a unanimous consent request.
Questions?
Thank you so much, Mr.
Texas to
Chairman.
Texas.
And thank you, Madam Secretary, for appearing before our committee today. I want to address several issues. I'm going to try not to repeat a lot of issues that have been addressed, but I do have some substantial concerns over how ICE agents present themselves to the public. Oftentimes, we've seen many videos out there where they're masked and not properly identified. I have a lot of real personal concern about that. I just put myself in the situation of that woman from Tufts, for example. You're just walking down the street, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 3 masked men, not properly identified, attack you and try to take you away. I find that to be reprehensible and not the values of this country. What steps are you taking to make sure that your ICE agents are not masked and properly identified when they approach someone?
Well, ICE agents always identify themselves to individuals that they're encountering or that they're working with. What I would say as far as if they are wearing something over their faces, it's oftentimes because that agent has been involved in undercover operations or needs to be able to continue the investigative work that they do on a day-to-day basis.
But don't you think, Madam Secretary, that people have a right to see whoever's trying to apprehend them? I think it's creating this unrealistic vigilante system. And are you aware that your materials, ICE agents, jackets and the sorts, are available on Etsy for $20? Anybody can do that, throw a mask on, and run around and terrorizing people of color without any regard for the law, without any regard, because your agency does not have proper protocols to make sure their agents are clearly identified and marked when they're executing their jobs.
Our agents do identify themselves. They verbally do that, and then also by the clothing that they're wearing. And if they do have something that is covering some of their facial features, it's for their investigative work or their undercover work that they do as a part of their job duties as well. What I would say is that it is important that we follow the procedures and protocols for every encounter that we have, and they have done that in every situation to the best of my knowledge.
I would suggest that your protocols need to be revised, because I don't think it's reasonable for masked men to be apprehending people on the streets. I think that instills a lot of fear. It doesn't instill security in the process. And in states like Texas, that is open carry, when any jackadoo can be walking around with a gun. I think some tragic circumstances are at bay. I'd like to switch gears to due process. I have a lot of concerns about the lack of due process that your agency has been affording people in this country. In Texas, for example, you had rounded up 171 individuals, were preparing to deport them, and it wasn't until the Supreme Court issued an opinion that that was unconstitutional and that their due process rights were being violated did your agency actually stop and adhere to the Supreme Court's opinion. My question to you is, has those efforts ceased in your agency? Are you going to cease trying to deport people without access to due process in the courts of law in compliance with the United States Supreme Court?
Well, Congresswoman, we are following due process and using it as to how Congress has laid out to us in statute, and we are complying with all federal judges' orders as well.
You weren't complying at that time. It took the United States Supreme Court to order you to comply, so you hadn't proactively complied on your own. You were intending to wrongfully deport people without access to a court hearing, without access to the rule of law, and that is why it was necessary for the United States Supreme Court,
Due process does not guarantee a hearing.
who issued an opinion ordering you and your agency to comply with the due process rights of the people in this country. That's what makes our country great, is we do have access to due process. And so my comment to you is I'm hoping as you move forward, because initially as you were proceeding through these deportation processes, you were not affording people due process, and the Supreme Court has now ordered you to do so. So I am assuming by your testimony that you do intend to comply with the Supreme Court's order moving forward, and we're not going to have any more instances of wrongful deportation without proper access to due process. Is that correct?
We are following federal judges' orders, and we are complying with due process
Well, we look
procedures
forward to
as
that.
they are laid out, as Congress has given us those tools to do that.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I have one other question about FEMA. I'm very concerned about the destruction of FEMA. You know, Texas is a state that has a lot of hurricanes, tornadoes, and natural disasters. We rely upon FEMA extensively, and I'm very worried about that. And when you are governor, though, you actually utilize FEMA for your own state. So you did recognize at the time when you were serving as a governor that FEMA played an important role in natural disasters within South Dakota. Is that correct?
Yes, we had 12 FEMA-related disasters during the 6 years I served as governor of the state of South Dakota.
But I just find it, I'm running out of time, but I just find it ironic.
I now recognize Mr. Pfluger, the gentleman from Texas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Magaziner for 5 minutes.
Madam Secretary, on April 24th, a woman in Louisiana was deported along with her 7-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son, both of whom were U.S. citizens. The 4-year-old son had stage 4 cancer. Now, you just stated under oath that the mother consented to having her U.S. citizen children removed. But I have spoken with the attorney for that U.S. citizen child with stage 4 cancer. She has also made numerous statements to the press in which she stated unequivocally that at no time did the mother consent to her U.S. citizen children being removed. What evidence do you have to support your claim that she did consent?
Congressman, we followed the same policies and procedures
What
for
evidence
every
do you
individual,
have?
and we
What
have
evidence do you have?
We have
that
documentation
she? What documentation do you have that mother consented?
We will get that to you, sir. I don't have it with me.
Please do.
today,
I understand
but
it's
that
hard to
mother
keep them all
consented
straight
to
because
take
you've
her
deported
child with
multiple
her.
U.S. citizen children, but I'm asking specifically about the 4-year-old with cancer who was deported on April 25th. For the record, that family was also not given access to legal counsel before they were deported, even though their lawyer was in the same building at the time. I'm holding in my hands here a document called ICE Directive 11064, Interests of Non-Citizen Parents and Legal Guardians of Minor Children. This is the policy for how ICE agents should handle situations like this. It states unequivocally that parents and legal guardians should have the ability to make alternative care arrangements for minor children prior to their arrest or detention, and that ICE must afford parents the opportunity to consult with legal counsel. So, did the ICE agents working on this case who deported this 4-year-old with cancer of their own volition fail to follow ICE policies, or were they directed to by your office or anyone else in DHS leadership?
Sir, this mother chose to keep her child with her.
You have not produced any evidence
when
to say so,
return
but I'm
back to
asking
her
again,
home country,
have you directed
and that is the
DHS
priority of President Trump is
officers
to keep
to
families
ignore
unified
this
together? It's
policy?
very different than the previous
right.
administration. The previous administration
On March
separated families
15th,
over and
reclaiming
over
my
and over
time,
again.
on March
This
15th,
is a
your
change.
department sent 3 airplanes to El Salvador. Those planes carried approximately 261 individuals who were imprisoned upon arrival. Did you personally review and approve the names of those 261 individuals before they were sent?
Sir, we have deported and sent home
Did
thousands
you
of individuals.
review the names of those individuals?
And we have individuals that have the
Why won't you answer the
responsibility
question?
within the Department of
Are you
Homeland
aware
Security.
of whether those 261 individuals were given the opportunity to speak with a lawyer or appear before a judge before they were put on those planes? Yes or no?
Sir, every single individual followed the exact same process.
They
that we
were
follow for
not
everyone
all.
who is
They
in
were
this-
not all given
in
the
this country
opportunity to
illegally.
appear before a judge or speak with a lawyer.
treated
On
the
April
same.
7th, the Supreme Court ruled that detainees must have an opportunity to have a hearing before they are deported. Are you familiar with the April 7th Supreme Court ruling?
I am.
Can you assure us that in the future you will abide by that Supreme Court ruling to provide detainees with a hearing before they are
We're
deported?
following all judges' orders. Yes, sir.
I have a photograph here of André Hernandez Romero, a gay makeup artist from Venezuela. He fled Venezuela fearing gang violence because of his opposition to the Maduro dictatorship and his sexual orientation. He presented himself at a port of entry and requested asylum. His claim was found to be credible, and he was placed in detention to await a full hearing. But he never received a full hearing because you put him on one of those planes to El Salvador, where he still is today. Listen to me. He had no criminal record in the United States or in any other country. He did not even enter the country illegally. He presented at a port of entry. He tried to do it the legal way, and to this date, the only evidence your department has presented to justify his imprisonment is that he had 2 tattoos, one that said mom and one that said dad. Do you have any other evidence to present for why this individual should be locked up in El Salvador?
Sir, every case is used
you have
the
any-
same protocols and the same processes and inputs.
Do you have any
that
evidence
that
other than the
law enforcement
tattoos that say
officers
mom
use in
or
criminal
dad for why
cases?
this
So it's
individual
not
should be
just on
locked up?
tattoos. It's who they're affiliated with, their communication.
You have not
who they're
presented
spending
any
time
other
with,
evidence,
criminal
nor has your
activities.
department.
The case is
Reclaiming
going
my time,
exactly the
during
same
your
as it was
confirmation
with
hearing,
other
you said your focus would be on deporting immigrants who have been convicted of crimes and those who have received removal orders. But that is not what you have been doing. Instead, you have been deporting children with cancer, children who are U.S. citizens, a gay makeup artist who committed no crime and didn't even enter the country illegally. You have been sloppy. Your department has been sloppy. And instead of focusing on real criminals, you have allowed innocent children to be deported while you fly around the country playing dress up for the cameras. Instead of enforcing the laws, you have repeatedly broken them. You need to change course immediately before more innocent people are hurt on your watch.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize Mr. Goldman for 5 minutes questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to go back to Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, Madam Secretary. But my first question for you is a pretty simple one. It's basic civics. Which branch of government does the Constitution give the authority to interpret what the law is, the judiciary or the executive branch?
Sir, going forward, the interpretation of the law, you make the laws in this body. The judicial branch makes sure that they have integrity and they're applied properly to individuals.
So I'm just going to take that as the judiciary branch. Now, let's focus for a second on what the judiciary branch has said about this case. We know the Supreme Court has said 9-0 that notwithstanding your statements under oath here today, that Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was afforded due process, he was in fact not afforded due process, because then if he were, you would have seen the withholding order that did not permit him to be deported to El Salvador. Now you allege, and I guess the Attorney General alleges, that he's a member of MS-13. That may very well be the case. And if he is, now that that is a foreign terrorist organization, certainly the immigration laws would allow him, and in fact require him, to be deported. I certainly would support that. But the problem that we have here is what you allege, what Ms. Green alleges, what the Attorney General alleges, is not the judiciary. You don't get to decide whether or not he is an MS-13 member. And you don't have to take my word for it, because Judge Wilkinson, a Fourth Circuit judge, very conservative, addressed this argument. He said, the government asserts that Abrego Garcia is a terrorist and a member of MS-13. Perhaps, but perhaps not. Regardless, he is still entitled to due process. If the government is confident in its position, it should be assured that position will prevail in proceedings to terminate the withholding of removal order. Will you commit right now to give Mr. Abrego Garcia that process where you can prove your allegation that he is a member of MS-13?
Congressman, that judge that you just quoted did not say he was not a member of MS-13. Who did say that he was a member of MS-13 was law enforcement officers that encountered this individual.
Yeah, he knows that. This is a Fourth Circuit judge. He knows all of what the evidence is, and he's saying if that evidence. So you're not going to commit to follow this order. You won't commit to follow this court order.
By the way, he identified
Madam Secretary,
himself.
I reclaim my time. Stop filibustering. Stop filibustering.
By gang members of MS-13.
Will you give Mr. Abrego Garcia the due process that the Supreme Court and Judge Wilkinson has required you to give him?
Abrego Garcia is an El Salvador resident who is in his home country. If he were to come back to this country, he would be immediately removed again.
How do you know?
He has received and been treated appropriately,
sir,
and he is not.
How can you say he's been treated appropriately if the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0? 9-0 that he hasn't been treated appropriately? Why is your opinion better
We had
and
two
have more
judges,
authority than the Supreme Court.
investigators, 2 judges, an immigration court that all said he was MS-13 and was removed from this country.
But you understand, that is you saying that. That is you saying that.
That is them saying that. This
No,
is
no, no, no.
investigators and law
That is
enforcement
you
officers
making
and
that
the case they built
determination.
against him. If you don't
The
trust our law
court
enforcement
has
officers
considered all that.
and
The judge has
investigators,
considered all that,
then
Madam
who do
Secretary.
you trust if you
And
don't
if you would be
trust judges?
quiet, because I'm reclaiming my time, you are not following this court order. But let's focus on the court order, because this opinion also says that to facilitate, which the Supreme Court is requiring, is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia to allow him to get due process?
Abrego Garcia is in his home country.
What
If he were to come
steps
back,
have
your
you
advocacy-
taken?
If your continued advocacy for him were to...
I'm not advocating for him.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
advocating for a
Absolutely.
court order, Madam
Gone to the
Secretary.
mat for this
The
man
court
who
order
has terrorized
says
people
that
in
you
traffic
must take
with human
steps
beings.
to follow the court order. You are here under oath. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia pursuant to this court order?
It's got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process, and that's under the Constitution.
Gentleman's
and you
time
should
has
fight too for
expired.
due process.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize, let's resecure our homeland. I now recognize the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Madam Secretary, to the hearing. Mr. Chairman, before we begin, I want to recognize National Police Week and thank the officers who protect our communities, this capital, and our country honorably and ably. We appreciate their service. As we observe National Police Week, I again call on the Speaker to follow the law and finally hang the plaque honoring those brave officers who defended the United States Capitol from a violent mob on January 6th. Over 140 law enforcement officers were assaulted that day, and honoring their bravery and sacrifice, as promised, is the least Congress can do. Turning to today's hearing, I'm glad Secretary Noem is finally testifying before the committee. After all, it's been 3 months since I sent you a letter asking for her to testify on the Trump administration's dismantling of the Department of Homeland Security and its harmful effects on communities across the country. Secretary Noem, I guess the chairman didn't think systematically dismantling the Department of Homeland Security, firing the federal workers who keep us safe, and violating the Constitution of the United States justified your timely appearance before this committee. But when Donald Trump demanded that Congress hand him money to do more damage to our homeland security, Republicans bent over backwards to help him and his billionaire friends at the expense of the American people. Whatever got you here, Secretary Noem, I'm glad you found time among your many photo ops and costume changes to testify about why President Trump is seeking more taxpayer dollars and what you plan to do with that money if you get it. And it is a lot of money. We're talking about $176 billion. That's how much President Trump has demanded that Congress give you to spend next year. Never mind the fact that your department is spending taxpayers' money so fast this year, you're about to be broke. Now you're saying you need $44 billion more, but all you've done is slash, burn, cut, dismantle, and tear apart DHS since you got here. You cut programs at the Federal Emergency Management Agency that help Americans prepare for and recover from disasters. You are unlawfully withholding grant money meant to prevent terrorism and respond to emergencies from local communities across the country. You cut programs at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, which prevents attacks on power lines, water treatment plants, schools, hospitals, and other critical infrastructure. You cut the number of transportation security officers in our airplanes. You cut the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, which keeps DHS from digging into Americans' private lives and violating people's constitutional rights. You are making Americans less safe. If you're cutting the things that help keep America safe, why should we give you an extra $44 billion? Is it to deport American citizen children with cancer? Is it to deport more veterans of the United States military? Is it to ignore the Supreme Court's order to facilitate the release of a lawful permanent resident you mistakenly shipped off to a foreign prison? Is it to punish people for exercising their First Amendment right? Is it to disappear more people off our streets with no due process and ship them to a foreign dictator's prison? Is it to fire more military veterans who continue to serve their country by working for DHS? Is it to slash efforts to fight persistent threats from foreign terrorist organizations and domestic terrorists? Is it to dismantle FEMA as hurricane season is about to get underway? Is it to decimate CISA and invite China, Russia, Iran, and other adversaries into our cyber networks? Is it just to be mean, threaten, and deny due process to vulnerable people? These are not hypotheticals. These are things that DHS has already done under your leadership or is trying to do, Secretary Noem. Your policies and actions are so bad that Republican members have been running and hiding from their own constituents, refusing to hold town halls because they know they cannot defend this administration. Republicans are unwilling to defend the Trump administration with the folks back home. So I guess it's down to you to try to do that here today. But you can't defend the indefensible, Secretary Noem. Your department is out of control. On your watch, the department is breaking the law, it's hurting people, and it's making America less safe. The Trump administration is outright lying to the courts and the American people. Just last week, 3 members from New Jersey, all current members or former members of this committee, tried to visit an ICE detention center, which they are permitted to do, as you know, by law, without notice, to conduct oversight after reports of issues at the facility. Instead of following the law, masked ICE personnel stopped and assaulted the members. Then, to make matters worse, instead of launching an investigation into the incident, your department lied to the press about the situation and threatened to arrest members of Congress for doing their job. Absolutely outrageous. It's a sad day for the Department of Homeland Security. Frankly, I've never seen anything like it, and I've served as the lead Democrat on this committee from its start. Even when the Secretary, my Republican colleagues, and I had strong disagreements, we still had productive conversations and did our duty to keep America safe. But that's not the case any longer. My colleagues across the aisle have sold their souls, or at least their spines, to Donald Trump. They try to cover the administration lies and blame Democrats for doing the job our constituents sent us here to do. Republicans have forgotten that Congress is a co-equal branch of government and that the oath we take to the Constitution is the same as the president. Republicans even want to cut Medicaid to fund tax breaks for millionaires. They put their billionaire buddies over the little guys every chance they get. And now you are here, Secretary Noem, with your hand out, looking for more taxpayer money to continue the slash and burn activities of the Department of Homeland Security over the past 100 or so days. until the Trump administration starts following the law, that's going to be a very, very hard sell. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I'm pleased to have the Secretary of Homeland Security before us today.
I'm going to hold off on my questions until the members have got done to see if some of them are duplicative. And so, Ms. Underwood, the floor is yours for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This weekend, the president made the remarkable statement that he, quote, doesn't know whether he has to uphold the Constitution. You, however, have taken a different position, both in your confirmation hearing and when you took the oath of office. You said that you were committed to complying with the Constitution. Do you still stand by that statement?
Absolutely. I believe President Trump
Excellent.
as well.
Let's start with Article 1, which gives Congress and only Congress the power of the purse. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. But this administration is freezing, terminating, and even clawing back federal grants and awards that were already signed into law. These are taxpayer dollars that were appropriated by Congress for the specific purposes that we laid out. So, Secretary, let me ask you, do you believe the administration has the authority to subvert appropriations law to freeze and terminate congressional funding?
The administration and the Department of Homeland Security used our authorities that we have to evaluate every grant that was in front of us and meet statutory requirements, but also to make sure that they were being spent appropriate.
So, of course, the president is within his authorities.
Make sure
Ma'am,
that
this
we
is
went
my time.
forward.
Thank you so much. Of course, the president's within his authorities to drive policy decisions within the bounds of federal law and the Constitution, but that's not what you've been doing. What I'm asking is whether you believe you have the authority to ignore appropriations law. Do you believe that the Constitution gives the executive branch unilateral authority to withhold funds appropriated by the legislative branch?
We have evaluated grants to make sure if they're being spent appropriately, and work that is underway and was authorized has continued. Other grants that have not been started and have not been authorized or obligated, we have reevaluated. And I think you're talking specifically about grants potentially within FEMA that were non-disaster related grants.
I'm talking
Those
broadly, ma'am,
programs are
and
being-
Article 2 does not give the executive the authority to withhold funds, period. And multiple courts have weighed in to agree. Multiple courts have ruled in agreement. Congress controls the power of the purse. That is a fact. That's not a question. That is a fact. And so if the president disagrees with certain spending, Congress passed the Impoundment Act to create a legal process to seek rescissions, and we expect him to follow the law. This administration is not just ignoring the constitutional power of the people's elected representatives. It is also violating the fundamental right of individuals. Do you believe that the Constitution grants everyone in our country the right to due process, including non-citizens?
The administration has the authority to.
Ma'am,
look
I'm
at
looking for a
while
yes or
grants are
no
spent
question.
and to
Yes or no. Do you believe the
reappropriate them
Constitution?
as
Yes,
appropriate.
ma'am. Do you,
We have
ma'am?
not conducted in
Reclaiming
any
my
kind
time,
of
Mr.
impoundment.
Chairman.
Time is yours.
Okay. Secretary Noem, I'm just looking for a yes or no here. Do you believe the Constitution guarantees due process to everyone in America?
Due process is exactly what this Congress lays
Yes
out.
or no?
It is, and
Okay,
the
ma'am,
tools
I'll take
you
that as
give
a
us
no.
on due process
Excuse me,
is
I'm trying,
afforded to.
ma'am, I'm trying to ascertain your understanding of the law as it applies to your department. And you as its leader should be able to give us a yes or no answer, because judge after judge has ruled that the law is not being followed. Do you believe that the U.S. government has the authority to deport American citizens?
No, and we are not deporting
great.
U.S. citizens.
I'm so happy to hear that you do not believe that the law gives you that authority, because the federal government has no authority under U.S. laws to deport any American citizen. And as I know, everyone viewing this hearing today knows that several American citizens have been deported to date.
That is not
Secretary
true.
Noem, that was not a question. Secretary Noem, that oath that we both swore before taking office was to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, not the president, not a political party, the Constitution. And that's what we're going to keep doing here at the Appropriations Committee. Thank you. I yield back.
The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the entire committee with an excellent sense of patience, the gentlelady from Connecticut. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and ranking member. Madam Secretary, earlier this year, the administration unveiled a thinly veiled propaganda ad about border security. It's about $200 million paid for by American taxpayers I might add. And the ads are supposedly about border security, but honestly, if you see the ad, it's like a political ad, and all of us know what political ads look like. Even the conservative Cato Institute says the ads are a perfect example of wasteful government spending that DOGE should cut. I also might add that, and this is a direct quote, and Madam Secretary, it says that earlier this year that President Trump had instructed you on how to fashion the campaign. He said, and again I quote, "I want you in the ads. I want your face in the ads," Noem recalled at the Conservative Political Action Conference, adding that Trump told her for the first ad, quote, "I want you to thank me for closing the border." Now, that's politics, quite frankly, at its worst. I understand that on April 30th, your department awarded an additional $6.7 million to a political consulting company called People Who Think, bringing their total award for this ad to $11.6 million. Your department has also awarded $35.5 million for this ad to a company called Safe America Media. And my understanding is that you used funding originally appropriated for CBP and USCIS for these awards. This sounds like a payout to Republican political consultants to fund ads that do more to tout the president than to secure the border. How were the contracts awarded? Competitive process? If so, why is USA Spending say that the contracts were given an exclusion from the DOGE Group's limitation on spending awards? This is $200 million. Somebody just talked about billboards. This is a $200 million ad campaign taking the money from CBP and USCIS to promote a political advantage. It's really kind of the height of arrogance. You're looking for more money from us to do that, but you're going to take a portion of the money that we have given you and you're going to spend it on political advertising. I mean, that really is, in Yiddish, the word is chutzpah. It really is that you engaged in here. So I know you're going to tell me.
Would you like me to answer?
Yeah, I would. And I foresee that you're going to tell me that these were all competitively bid.
They were.
Et cetera.
Done through the exact same process as any other ad campaign would be done, absolutely. And I would tell you that it's not $200 million and that President Trump was very clear from the very beginning that he recognized that the fake news in this country was not going to tell the truth of what the work had been done at the border to secure this country. And these ads aren't only playing in the United States, they're playing in other countries where we had the largest invasion coming into this country from. And overwhelmingly, if you look at the data on the ground in these countries where these ads have been
with all
playing,
due respect,
the flow has stopped.
With all due respect.
Even when I was in Mexico and having
Excuse me, Madam
conversations.
Secretary, the time is mine. With all due respect, this is a political ad campaign, and let's just not try to sugarcoat it. I had just somebody talk about billboards, and you talking about how use of taxpayers' dollars. These are taxpayers' dollars as well. Let me move to the program I mentioned earlier. This is the BRIC program. In early April, FEMA cut the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program, claiming, and I quote, "Under Secretary Noem, DHS is eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse," end quote. When the committee staff asked for evidence of waste, fraud, or abuse in this program, or the authority used to end the program, FEMA said that the due diligence for these projects can take a long time and failed to give examples that met GAO's definition of waste, fraud, or abuse. The legal authority you used to cancel most of these projects was also not provided. And I'm just going to make this flat-out statement. You do not have, nor does the president have, the legal authority to abrogate what the Appropriations Committee appropriates. It's the power of the purse. It's in the Constitution. And I think if I heard right in the last couple of days, the president wasn't sure that we should abide by the Constitution. But we tried to abide by the Constitution, those of us who raised our right hand and said we will abide by the Constitution. There is no legal authority. There is no inherent authority to claim the appropriations funds can be used for other than what they were appropriated for. I don't know that you can. Basic questions from your agency on essential programs that the communities represent or rely on. You all can't. You should just say waste, fraud, abuse, and you think that that covers it. Well, Madam Secretary, I will tell you it doesn't. We're going to challenge that, and you have no authority.
References that we are operating under the authority that the Department of Homeland Security
You
has.
have no
and that
authority
these
to
BRIC
abrogate
grants-
these funds. It's
these
the
BRIC grants are
prerogative
being
of the
reevaluated
Appropriations
to make
Committee.
sure that they are
The
being
power
spent
of the
appropriately
purse
to which
resides
you all
here
directed they be
and not there. Keep it in mind because it is the Constitution of the United States. Thank you.
very familiar
I'm
with.
happy to have this conversation take place off the clock, but now we're going to move to the gentleman. Thank you, Madam Ranking Member. The floor is now belongs to the gentlelady from Connecticut, the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, who got here as quick as she could. Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My God, this is twice in one day here, so it's great to see you. We're hearing hopping here. Thank you so much, and I want to thank the ranking member Underwood for holding the hearing today, and welcome to you, Madam Secretary, and thank you for appearing before the subcommittee today. I just want to begin with a message to your workforce, if I might, and that's I'm grateful, very grateful for the work that they do, from search and rescue efforts of the Coast Guard to our first responders around the ground after natural disasters to those keeping us safe in the air and on the ground and at sea. I want to start with some big picture questions because I think we know very little of the details about where the $646 million cuts within FEMA's grant programs will come from. It is no secret that there are numerous reports of you, if we need to correct the record, stating that you want to, quote, eliminate FEMA within the Department of Homeland Security. I'm concerned about the direction that the administration is taking with regard to FEMA, canceling programs like BRIC, a program enacted into law by President Trump in his first term without any evidence of waste, fraud, and abuse, alongside the freezing of grants, and now 2026 budget requests targeting even more of FEMA's resources. And just right now, in terms of looking at the cancellations, the Science and Technology Directors, Centers of Excellence, and Office of University Programs, as I mentioned, the FEMA-administered grant programs frozen virtually all grant obligations pending a review as it determines whether it will try to choke off funding for unacceptable political reasons. Resources for states and communities to respond to disasters, secure firefighting equipment, protect against terrorism, secure our ports, and much more is being held up. And as I mentioned, the cancellation of the BRIC program, funding to support hazard mitigation, reduce the toll of future disasters, save lives. That money's not going out. Research has shown mitigation efforts like BRIC save a minimum of $6 for every dollar invested and save more than double when including mitigation of economic impacts. So federal disaster relief should be readily available across the United States, regardless of where you live. Natural disasters happen everywhere. They should not be concerned about the federal government turning their back on them when they need the help the most. We need to give constituents what they need when they're facing tragedy, that they will not be stranded due to political discord. My ask of you is, what is your plan with regard to FEMA? Are you planning to eliminate FEMA? Your testimony references that you want to, quote, eliminate dysfunction of the current agency. I'm unclear, I don't know if my colleagues are clear on what you mean by dysfunction. And I'm concerned that you're causing more dysfunction within the workforce that should be preparing itself for the pending hurricane season.
Well, thank you for your question and the discussion on this topic today. President Trump has been very clear since the beginning that he believes that FEMA and its response in many, many circumstances has failed the American people, and that FEMA as it exists today should be eliminated and empowering states to respond to disasters with federal government
If you'll just,
support.
with all due respect, where is the evidence of the failure of FEMA? I don't know about everybody else on this. My state, Connecticut, was hit very, very hard with Superstorm Sandy. Every community in some way or another has been hit by that. And the FEMA on the ground, people come in, work with the families, deal with getting the funding out. Where is the evidence of the failure of FEMA?
Congresswoman, we still have claims open from Hurricane Katrina. We have fire claims that are still unpaid to people who said they were due them 7 to 8 to 10 years old. They have never been paid by FEMA. So one of the worst things that the federal government can do is to stand up in front of the American public and say, we will be there, we will walk alongside you in the most horrible time of your life, and then never follow through on it.
Well, that's
what the president has said is he's sick and tired of federal agencies that pick and choose who wins and who loses. He wants to make sure that the federal government's commitment, when it makes a commitment, that it follows through. So he's going to empower states.
The federal government is abdicating its commitment to the American people who find
themselves. It did certainly
themselves.
under Joe Biden's administration.
Let me
sure
just say this
that
to you. The
communities are
Office
ready
of
for
Professional
disasters.
Responsibility. The Office of Professional, because I knew you were going to go there. As you know, FEMA's Office of Professional Responsibility, under the Biden administration, there was no evidence, no direction or agency or field leadership to discriminate against disaster victims based on political
I'll give
affiliation,
you all
which
the
was a
evidence you
charge.
need. I'll follow up with you.
Well, and I will follow up. I will follow up, and I follow up with my colleagues, quite frankly, and to really listen to people whose states, communities have been devastated, and what role FEMA has played. I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars went out in Louisiana. Actually, I've asked my staff to calculate that when Katrina hit, and the response was overwhelming. And the response has been overwhelming. If you want to make corrections, that's fine. We all agree with that.
Yeah, we can point to thousands and thousands of
Well,
instances where
if you wouldn't
FEMA
mind getting
was
this
timely
committee,
and
if you
responsive
wouldn't
to
mind
people.
getting this committee,
Unfortunately,
the information and the evidence where you talk about the dysfunction of the agency and where it has really failed. That would be important to those of us who are appropriating dollars. And it would appear that the administration overall has a way in which they're looking at dismantling the federal government. The states will never have the amount of money because the federal government isn't going to pass that money to the states to be able to deal with what happens. It's when the federal government comes in and be able to give a hand to do that. And I think it's very clear from what you said that both yourself and the president really want to dismantle the federal government and the agencies that have provided service to the American people for decades. I thank the chair for your time and yield back.
Consent to introduce the article from PBS NewsHour entitled "Children Who Are U.S. Citizens Deported Along with Foreign-Born Mothers," in which the attorney for that 4-year-old U.S. citizen says that at no time did his mother consent to the child U.S. citizen being removed from the country.
Without objection, so ordered, and I recognize Mr. Correa for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. First of all, Secretary Noem, welcome to this committee. Had the honor of hearing testimony from Secretary Kelly, Secretary Mayorkas, and of course you. Welcome. We all have the same interests, which are protecting Americans, American taxpayers, as we move forward in our jobs. And I want to say that your testimony, my colleague from Louisiana, and myself have the same interests, which are to protect Americans, especially to protect children, especially to protect American citizen children. That's where my concern is, Madam Secretary, that Your administration, I believe, has consistently violated the law by denying due process to U.S.-born American children. Under your watch, you've deported American children, U.S.-born children. Some of the examples, I only have 5 minutes to talk about, but I'll come back to the case that was described or discussed a little while ago, which was 2 American children, 4 and 7, were put on a plane with their mother, sent to Honduras within 24 hours of being detained. There was an attorney involved. And we're debating right now the issue, as if you stated, that the mother wanted the child to go with her, but there was an attorney involved. That person was not consulted. That family was denied the opportunity to talk to that attorney. The attorney was there. What is wrong with asking the attorney? You've got a family that had been checking in, following ICE direction. Check in, bring your family to check in. They weren't let out. That happens in my district all the time. Families check into ICE. If ICE determines they should be deported, do you know what we do? I call ICE and I say, give them 30 days. Some of these families have been in this country 20, 30 years. Give them 30 days to get their situation in order. Make sure that they figure out how to keep their American children in the U.S. Give them the opportunity to make an educated decision on the lives of American citizens. In this case and other cases, ma'am, you have split-second decisions to make a decision on those children. And you, Madam Secretary, also make split-second decisions based on whatever coerced discussion you're having with that mother. And I say coerced because when you're scared to death, your life is about to change, and you've got an attorney next door that you will not permit that family to consult with that attorney, you got an issue. Case number 2, 2-year-old American daughter, also deported to Honduras. They were also denied access to their lawyers. According to her lawyer, ICE prevented the mother from speaking to the lawyer or anyone else in the family. 2-year-old American citizen. Can't we slow it down and just take a moment before they're deported in 24 hours? The mom didn't want the daughter to stay in the United States. They may have had relatives in the United States, family. Even the own Trump-appointed federal judge overseeing this case has said that he had a strong suspicion that the government just deported a U.S. citizen with no meaningful due process. Madam Secretary, I think we're all in agreement here. Let's go after MS-13. Let's go after drug dealers. Let's go after Tren de Grúa, the bad folks who hurt my community as well as everybody else's community. But I fail to see where a child, 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 7-year-old children could be on your top of priorities for deportations. This is still America. Due process, the Fifth Amendment. Madam Secretary, I know ICE agents. I deal with them all the time. I've toured the southern border, blue uniforms, green uniforms, talking to them about what they need to do the job. More than happy to have that discussion with you, publicly or privately, but deporting U.S.-born children, ignoring their attorneys, take a deep breath. You've been here 20, 30 years. A lot of the times back home, when I ask the ICE agents, give them 30 days, you know what? Without fail, that person comes back or self-deports. We can do better. Madam Secretary, I'm going to ask you one last question in 9 seconds. You're under oath. Have you fired, retired, dismissed any DSA agents that have not followed your policies?
What kind of agents, sir?
DHS, Homeland Security agents. Yes.
Specific law enforcement officers?
Yes, ma'am. Officers under your watch.
I haven't given any specific orders to any law enforcement officers under the Department of Homeland Security. So there are, within the Department of Homeland Security, 280,000 employees. 47,000 of them are Coast Guard individuals. So, 230,000 individuals are employees, and we're very proud of the work that they do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing that it's Police Week. We have many agencies that have law enforcement officers in them that get up every single day to serve their communities and to make sure that our laws matter and that they're enforced appropriately and that no one is treated differently than someone else.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize Mr. Guest from Mississippi.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter for the record the Prince George's County Police Department Gangfield interview.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Cuellar. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, it's good to see you. I was going to show you, but I think the rules don't allow me to show you just something because I just want to talk about basics, but hopefully we can sit down later and I can show you what I'm referring to. Want to talk about some of the basics. I live at the border, lived all my life there. Want to talk to you about river roads. I want to talk to you about Carrizo cane, technology that's needed, aerostats, and cameras that are not working in some infrastructure. Basics that are needed for border security. My area, Laredo, it's the largest inland port, bigger than LA, bigger than any other place in the country. We get 18,000 trailers a day. We're about to expand from 8 lanes to 18, plus another bridge. We got 2 of them, 2 rail bridge. So trade is very important to us. But when we talk about illegal crossings, we've been the second lowest crossing in the country, and we still are out there. I think right now, latest numbers, 30 people, maybe 40 people a day coming through my area, which is almost nothing. So thank you for that. River roads, the river roads, and I wish I could show this just to show you, but the river roads go this way. Let's say the river's here. The river roads, the roads go this way. So Border Patrol can go here, but they can't go across. So what we're asking is for river roads to follow the river itself, and I think that would be a big investment, a good investment that we need. So one is the river roads. The other thing is the Carrizo cane. The Carrizo cane, I know you got some folks from people that are very familiar, but the Carrizo cane will grow almost the size of this. And it's not good for Border Patrol. I think Tony Gonzalez and folks that are from the border understand, we ought to get rid of that Carrizo cane on our river, but get the Mexicans to do that. I'll show you the maps, and I know you've been out there, but it shows you the Carrizo cane is on both sides. If we can clear that up, get the Mexicans to do that, that will be good for Border Patrol. So river roads, Carrizo cane, technology in my area, only 1/3 of the cameras are working, and if you ask some of the other Border Patrol, they're not working. Basically, they're using the RVS, which is an old model. They're trying to get the AST towers where more better to use, or whatever technology. But this old technology is like going to a car and you fix it, and they keep coming. The same thing they're doing right now, they keep bringing folks that are coming in to fix it up. 1/3 of the cameras are working, 2/3 are not working. That's not right. Procurement process needs to be better so they can move faster to buy that technology. And finally, there are dead spots. Even now, with the modern technology, Border Patrol can be in certain areas and dangerous areas, and they don't have the technology and radio that's working. Aerostats, the military has a lot of them in surplus. The problem is in the past administrations, they've hired contractors that Homeland was paying too much money. So we need to look at those aerostats that are available from the military surplus itself. Border Patrol, I think right now we got 19,327. We funded 22,000, and we need to hire more. OFO, the men and women in blue, were at 26,334. We're still below the monitoring, so we need to hire those officers. So those are some of the things, and I know I gave you a whole bunch of things, but there's the basic things that are important to Border Patrol. Last point, as we try to hire new Border Patrol, I know the reconciliation has something that will affect them, that it has to do with Social Security supplement. I've talked to a lot of Border Patrol agents, and right now they're crunching the numbers. Do I retire at the age of 52, or do I have 57, what's going to happen with that supplemental. So instead of focusing on the border, they're human beings and they're focusing on that. I know that's another committee, but those are the basics that I know I don't have enough time, but I would love to follow up with you and your folks on.
Absolutely. I will certainly do that, Congressman. And I want to thank you for talking about the technology needs and the investments that we need at the border in order for these agents to truly do their job and do it with excellence. I will tell you that recruitment at CBP is up over 50%. So as we've allowed them to go back and to do their jobs, we have had more and more interest in people, more applications coming in, and I think that's a fantastic trend, that as people talk about how discouraging it was over the last several years by them not having their hands tied, that now that they actually get to secure the border and work for the American people, that they're recruiting more and more help to be assisting along the way. Thank you. And we'll follow up on the rest of these conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Britt, and I look forward to working with you and Ranking Member Murphy in this Congress. Madam Secretary, as Senator Murphy mentioned in his opening statement, Secretary Noem, under your leadership, we have seen you ignore our appropriation laws, our Constitution, common sense, and even basic humanity. And like a lot of Americans, I really have been horrified by the lawlessness and incompetence and cruelty that we have all witnessed. And for all the talk about going after criminals, you have sidetracked DHS staff who are investigating drug dealers, terrorists, human traffickers, and rather than photo ops, we need more of your focus on providing basic diligence, because your crackdown has roped in American citizens and people who are here legally with no criminal record. Now, I'm not going to ask you whether that was right or wrong. I know it's wrong. The world knows it's wrong. And I think the first thing the history is going to say about your leadership is that you were responsible for many of these travesties. So I'm deeply concerned. You've deported a 4-year-old U.S. citizen with cancer. You've disappeared people to a notorious prison in El Salvador. And you have spent $100 million in taxpayer dollars to air TV ads thanking President Trump. That is really reckless. It's unacceptable, and in my opinion, can't continue. The American people are paying for this with our taxpayer dollars and with their most basic rights. Now, in the last 3 months, you have frozen or canceled over $100 billion in funding that was approved by Congress, bipartisan. We are talking about everything from disaster relief to grants that keep people safe. But when my staff has requested information on the status of this unacceptable holdup, the department failed to provide any acceptable justification. This illegal freeze, and it is illegal, is taking a real toll on communities who are waiting on the investments that Congress has delivered. So will you commit to immediately unpausing these funds?
Well, Senator, thank you for covering a lot of topics there. Let me touch on a few of those right away.
Well,
what the
if
Trump
you could
administration
answer-
is doing
I know
is
you've
enforcing the law for the first time. Under the Biden administration,
I'm asking you about the funds that
illegal
are out
aliens were prioritized over American citizens. Now the scales of justice have been leveled, and
Madam
no one
Chair,
is
I'm gonna
treated
reclaim
better
my
than
time
anyone
because
else.
I asked you a
Citizens
specific
are
question.
treated the same,
Madam
and these
Secretary,
illegal
I know
aliens
your
and criminals
answer.
are being
I heard
deported.
it previously. I'm asking you a
The
specific
grants that you
question.
are referencing,
Correct.
the grants that you are referencing have been paused and reevaluated to make sure that they are truly being spent in the way to which they were appropriated.
Well, these were-
Many of these grants were being diverted
Madam
into things they
Secretary,
were never intended
these
to.
funds were passed on a bipartisan basis by members
Absolutely,
in
and
this
the Biden
Congress.
administration perverted them in how they used them, diverted them to facilitate illegal immigration, to house people in places like the Roosevelt Hotel, who held illegal
Okay,
criminals
we're
that took the
talking,
life
Madam
of
Chair,
Laken
about
Riley.
$100
I think all of us
billion.
have
It is
recognized that
not credible
the
to
victims
me that
here
all
are
the
the people who have
recipients of
died and
that-
lost their children because
Madam
of this
Secretary,
situation.
it is not credible. Madam Chair, it is not credible that $100 billion is used to break the law. That just cannot be true. And let me change this a little bit. On the other hand, I am very concerned that DHS is now dramatically overspending funding that Congress has not provided. If you were a CEO doing that, I don't think you'd be in your job long. We need accountability and we need answers. And that includes informative responses to oversight questions sent to the department over the last 3 months. I am ranking member on this committee. I have worked with every member of this committee. We take our responsibility serious to fund your department and others. We need to have answers, we need to have accountability, and we need to make sure you're not overspending money that you were not allocated.
Well, thank you for that question. I will be very
not really a
clear in the
question, it's a
fact.
statement.
Do you want me to respond?
Well, you can.
Well, I've worked many jobs in my life, but I also have been a CEO. I've run
I'm not
businesses. I've been a
questioning your
governor.
credentials. I'm
and it is
questioning your spending.
We are prioritizing where our security needs are in this country, and we are hoping that this body will agree that reconciliation is necessary to address the things that have been neglected in this country for too long, that we have the technology upgrades, the manpower upgrades that are necessary. So the $170 billion request for the Department of Homeland Security
Madam
is
Chair, my
incredibly
time is
important
running
to make
out,
sure we
and
have the
I do have a
tools that
couple
we
of
need.
additional questions. The fact is that you've not been given this funding. Saying that it's going to come in reconciliation that has not passed is not an acceptable answer. I did want to ask about FEMA and disaster relief. This is really important. A lot of disaster relief has been politicized. You've endorsed eliminating FEMA outright. We have seen an upheaval at FEMA that is going to put lives in jeopardy. 1 in 5 FEMA employees have been pushed out, taking this administration's so-called buyout offer. We are losing indispensable staff just weeks away from fire and hurricane season, and over $100 billion in disaster relief and FEMA grants are still being held up. DHS is making it a lot harder to qualify for relief, something people in my home state of Washington are experiencing firsthand. Multiple requests from governors have been rejected in recent weeks, including a request from our state. And we haven't been given any response about this, and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, has President Trump directed you to prioritize funding for Republican states?
Absolutely not.
Have you directed your staff to prioritize funding to Republican-led states over Democratic
Absolutely
states?
not.
Have
There
your
is,
staff
under this administration, there will not be any politicization of support, relief, FEMA assistance, or grants given based on politics.
Well,
Every single person
there
will be
is a
treated the same.
clear
It will be very
trend-
different than the Biden
Madam
administration.
Secretary, there's a clear trend of Republican-led states getting very fast responses and funding. Democrat-led states are being forced to wait. We have never treated FEMA as a partisan issue in this country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Recognize Ms. Ramirez for 5 minutes on the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member. A few weeks ago, right from this dais, I talked about the hypocrisy of these Republican policies. We're talking about gutting services that working people rely on while writing blank checks for ultra-wealthy bosses. Well, here we are again. We're back from recess. And Republicans are looking to cut $1.5 trillion in funding for our communities. But today, we're considering also a $69 billion infusion into an agency that is violating our rights, undermining due process, and blaming administrative errors for their criminal behavior. And this gift to Trump and Noem comes without oversight, which Republicans on this committee have proven either unwilling or incapable of. Case in point, my request to conduct an oversight visit in El Salvador was publicly denied in the press, despite evidence that Noem spent $6 million of taxpayer dollars to disappear immigrants to a foreign prison without due process. The committee is considering this massive infusion of capital into the department without holding a single hearing with Secretary Noem, a request that I have made and others several times to this body, and I'm making again today. Secretary Noem has to come before this body and answer our questions about the department's unconstitutional, illegal, and inhumane activities. Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to include in the record a letter requesting Noem come before the committee to testify. In case, I can keep going, I can do it at the end if you'd like.
We can do it now. So ordered.
Thank you. In case there's any question about what those unconstitutional, illegal, inhumane activities are, let's revisit some of them for the record. Republicans are seeking to fund the wasteful spending of this administration after Trump and Noem already wasted $300 million in 6 weeks to militarize the border. The administration says they're committed to legal immigration, while they are cruelly canceling the appointments of thousands of immigrants who legally sought asylum in our country. Trump and Noem have even denied children, 2-year-old children, their basic right to face immigration proceedings with a lawyer, including children going through cancer treatment. Since January, Trump and Noem have used ICE to terrorize our communities, profiling Latinos and arresting U.S. citizens, like the man who was detained in Chicago after buying a slice of pizza, despite of the fact the guy was carrying his ID and his Social Security card, and the Puerto Rican veteran in New Jersey. Folks, these are the same people who launched a $200 million anti-immigrant ad propaganda campaign with your constituent taxpayer dollars. And then, last month, in violation of court orders, Secretary Noem acted on the fascist dreams of her leader and sent immigrants to offshore detention centers. Noem wasted millions to fly immigrants without criminal records to Guantanamo. And then she decided to enter into a $6 million deal with El Salvador government to disappear and mistakenly deport a legal resident, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. In addition, a hairdresser, soccer players, 8 women to a men's prison, and a long list of immigrants with no criminal records. The list includes a young man from Chicago whose family had no idea how to reach him after recognizing him in an authoritarian propaganda video of Noem touring the prison. All while Trump, Noem, and Rubio weaponized immigration enforcement against activists and dissenting voices like legal permanent resident Mahmoud Khalil, international student Rumisa Ostork, and labor rights organizer Alfredo Lelo Juarez. In 3 months, Trump and Noem have abused the power of the Department of Homeland Security to pursue a campaign of persecution, of mass incarceration, and deportation. Day after day, Noem disregards the authority of Congress, the laws of the land, the constitutional rights of residents, the courts, due process, and every check and balance that protects us from fascist authoritarians. There is no way in hell that I'm giving this administration $1 more to violate our rights and criminalize our communities. And further, Noem must resign from her position as Secretary of Homeland Security. Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to include in the record a letter demanding Noem's resignation as the Secretary of Homeland Security.
So ordered, and I believe the gentlelady's time has expired.
It is now. Thank you. With that, I yield back.
Okay, she yields. Just to let everybody know, I think Secretary Noem's coming in May the 14th. But anyway, who's next? Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Governor, for your attendance, and I appreciate us meeting last week and our frank conversation. So in partly following up to our conversation, in recent years, I've been in very close contact with our Arizona border communities, which are unlike other border communities, and about the funding needs to address migrant influxes through the Shelter and Services Program, or SSP. Without this funding, border communities must bear all the financial burden for national immigration challenges and the broken border in general. So that means police, fire, hospital systems, in general, anything of that. And at the same time, they will also face the potential challenges of street releases. And again, these are very small towns on the border, so having thousands of people being released becomes both burdensome, security issues, and just not fair to them. And we get lumped in with places like New York and Chicago about how they do their shelter programs. Our shelter programs are not the same as New York and Chicago. We do not permanently put people in apartments or anything of that nature. We are trying to move people away from the border so that way they don't become a burden on these very, very small communities. So I'm very highly concerned, as I told you in our meeting, when the SSP program becomes politicized and to the point where we get lumped in with those programs which I don't think are effective and are actually counterproductive, and it ends up depriving our small Arizona borders of these very, very vital funds that they need. So as DHS Secretary, how would you ensure that border communities are not left to respond to and pay for these immigration influxes, the broken border system on their own? And would you commit to helping really not politicize or just join the SSB program to the point where places that are doing things correctly, like Yuma, Arizona, like Pima County, like Cochise County, aren't lumped in with the people that are doing things incorrectly, like New York State and Chicago?
Well, Senator, thank you for the conversation in your office about the program, FEMA, the southern border and the challenges, and then also the difference between your state and how you utilize funds versus other states. I would say that my hope is that if given the opportunity to serve as secretary, that the federal government would no longer, and I believe as President Trump has promised the American people, facilitate an illegal alien invasion, and that your communities in Arizona would no longer have the issue with having people in your small towns and communities that you need to figure out how to take care of and get them to where they want to go in other places of the country. The president has promised he will secure the border, that we will uphold our nation's laws, and that he will do that to the benefit and be putting America first again. So I know we talked extensively about the SSP program and how you've utilized it, but getting these programs back to what they were intended is important. FEMA is a disaster response agency, and some of the facilities that have been utilizing these types of funds and dollars need to be reevaluated and to make sure that it's truly doing the service that is upholding our nation's laws.
And certainly I understand reevaluating, especially how some of these states have been using it. In an ideal world, we don't have to have a program like that because we don't have this mass of humanity that's coming towards our borders. But even under the first Trump administration, we actually still needed it also. So this is why my concern is to not get rid of this program because, again, these small communities, I'm talking communities of maybe 10,000 people, maybe only 6 or 7 cops are going to end up really bearing the brunt. And we're not a big state. We can't really compensate for these types of losses. These small communities are also largely in, you come from a rural state, counties that are largely rural with a lot of federal land, so they actually don't even have a tax base. So when the broken immigration system sends people to these borders and we end up not having to have enough, these communities don't have enough money to pay for cops, firefighters, overtime for hospital systems, it's that type of program that keeps these small communities afloat. So I just want to make sure, that again, this does not become politicized and that we are kept separate from, I think, the mistakes that other states have taken on. Moving on, in Arizona, we have large parts of the border that run through tribal lands. We have 22 federally recognized tribes. We have great relationships with these tribes. They want to be collaborative partners when it comes to border security. And we have some great programs that have worked in the past. For example, the Shadow Wolves program with the Tohono O'odham Nation. It's a really good example, collaborative program of tribal law enforcement that worked with DHS to make sure they stop human smuggling and cartels going through the borders. But as DHS Secretary, what is your plan to consult with our border tribes and work together to balance both national security but also their sovereignty?
Yeah. Well, Senator, I believe that my experience as governor and my relationship with working with our tribes is going to be an incredible, powerful tool for me to bring to bear at the Department of Homeland Security to work on how we secure our southern border, but still respect their sovereignty and still be able to work with them. This year, when looking at public safety issues that we had in South Dakota and their lack of ability to hire tribal officers on our reservations in South Dakota, I offered to train federal law enforcement officers, BIA officers, but also their tribal police in South Dakota at no cost to our tribes. And it's been an incredible, powerful tool that we've had to build relationships. Those tribal police had the chance to go through academy with the local maybe deputies from the counties and the state highway patrol troopers that were coming on board. And those relationships have built partnerships in our state that we didn't have before. The Shadow Wolf training opportunity is incredible that was down in Arizona that you spoke of too. And in looking into that program, I'd like to continue to build on that and perpetuate in the future so that our tribes have an opportunity to have a secure border, but also have it reflect their values and their culture and have their own people be a part of the solution. And then even when it comes to the infrastructure of the wall, that we're respecting that and their landscapes and their land as well. So I look forward to working with you as we move into this next administration to be able to protect our country and then work and respect our tribes as we do so.
Thank you. And the President Trump and some of his other potential staff and advisors have been very vocal about implementing a mass deportation strategy. Talking to my agricultural community, my dairy community, they have concerns that this approach will lead to workforce shortages that will further drive up the costs of everything. And something that we have really been working hard to across, I think, a bipartisan manner to bring down the costs of everything. And unfortunately, this would reignite inflation. What is your plan to ensure safe and legal immigration processes for agricultural workers while protecting local agricultural operations, including those both in of our home states.
Well, Senator, the President and President Trump has been very clear that his priority is going to be deporting criminals, those who have broken our laws and perpetuated violence in our communities. That'll be the priority. And as I spoke earlier with our statistics, having over 425,000 of those with criminal convictions in our country, that will be a focus that we need to tackle right away, and it'll be a big one. Beyond that, his next priority is going to be those with final removal orders, and focus on those individuals who have long overstayed, and that there is a consequence for ignoring our federal laws. Beyond that, we'll continue conversations. As you know, I'm a farmer and a rancher and come from an agricultural state, and we'll work together to make sure that laws are followed. You know, it is the Senate and the House that puts forward the laws. I, as Secretary, uphold the law. So you determine what that is, and debate and discussion. I'll be transparent and share as much information and insight as I have with my background and experience, and continue to work with you.
Senator Moreno.
And Senator Blumenthal. And we'll see how it goes. We're going to start with Senator Peters with one more 5-minute round.
Yeah, I'll be fairly brief. We've had opportunity to talk at length about many issues, and again, I appreciate that, Governor. I just want to stress going forward, and we've heard a lot of comments here. I think there's been a fair amount of political theater, not as much as I know exists in other committees, and I've always strived, and I know Ranking Member, or now Chairman Paul, share the notion that we want to be a fact-based committee and try to find tangible solutions to the tough problems that we face, and data is important. We've heard a lot of numbers being thrown around here, and I don't have time to go through and challenge those numbers. Some of them we don't even know where they came from. I don't think that's helpful to the very important mission, if confirmed, that you're going to be dealing with. So I hope in the future that we're actually dealing with facts. You've mentioned many times that you do want to deal with facts and real data. And again, we heard a lot here that's not real data, and we should not operate that way. And if confirmed, when we move forward, I'm going to look forward to working with you based on the facts and understand where the real threats are, how we need to appropriate resources to make sure we're meeting those threats. And let's take this hyper-partisanship out of such an important issue of Homeland Security. We have way too much partisanship in this country, and it's resulted in a polarization of people here. We've got to come together as this country. We've got to lock arms and understand that we're all proud Americans. We all want to do what's best for the American people and solve the issues that are before us. So in that spirit, and certainly you've communicated that spirit to me, but in that spirit, I hope, if confirmed, that is exactly what you will be bringing to this office. And let's move away from this toxic political environment that we have in the country and celebrate what's great about our country and the spirit of bringing the American people together. So I have one question before we turn it over to other members. As a member of this committee, as well as the Armed Services Committee, I've focused a great deal on the safe integration of drones in our airspace. While addressing the growing threats that drones possess. We certainly see what drones are doing in changing the face of warfare, whether it's in Ukraine and other battlefields around the world. We are very concerned about the weaponization of those drones and what it could mean to the security here in the United States. I've proposed comprehensive legislation to extend authorities beyond just the FBI and DOJ and Homeland Security to local law enforcement. You mentioned in your comments about security for the Super Bowl, which is incredibly important. But we have to remember that that threat exists for all games. In fact, one of the biggest supporters of my legislation is the NFL. In fact, we just had a recent playoff game that was delayed because of drones that flew into that playoff game. We are very concerned that you could have a drone with a grenade or an explosive device, which would be absolutely catastrophic. It's absolutely essential that we address this threat. What we're seeing around the world and what we're seeing in daily activities should be a concern. I think this is just a matter of time. It's not if, it's when. And we need to be on the front end of that. And with that in mind, I want to remind folks that Congress just recently extended critical counter UAS authority, counter drone authority, only for a short time basis through the for the 12th time. We only do these little tiny short-term extensions, and we aren't dealing with the problem comprehensively as we should. And those are going to expire on March 14th, a very short time from now. And so my question for you, Governor, is if confirmed as DH Secretary, will you commit to working with me and my colleagues to pass durable, long-term authorities that will protect this country from what is a real threat and it's just a matter of time? And I don't want to have a horrible incident occur and people wonder why we didn't take action beforehand. So please address that.
Senator, I look forward to working with you in this committee to address the threats we may face and the usage of drones in this country and in relation to our national security interests and our homeland security interests. So thank you for bringing up the conversation today, because it is one of the areas within DHS that we have a responsibility to address in cooperation with Congress.
And my first comments, I'm bringing people together. Please comment on that.
Oh, well, thank you,
I didn't
sir.
ask that question,
Yes,
but
no.
it's in my 24 seconds left.
I'm looking forward to working with everyone, Republicans and Democrats, and everyone else in between that in this country that is focused on keeping America safe and secure for our future. I would just point, Senator, to my background and my history. When I came to Congress, I worked with Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle on many pieces of legislation and was very happy to do so and focus on priorities on where we could agreement, knowing we may disagree on some issues, but there was areas where we could keep the federal government accountable and do due diligence by the people that pay their taxes and get up and go to work every single day. As governor as well, I was governor for every single person in the state of South Dakota, and they were my #1 priority, and everyone knew there that it didn't matter if you were Republican or Democrat, that my focus was on them and keeping our state thriving and free. So I look forward to continuing the work that I always have to be coming up with solutions and in a bipartisan manner. And hopefully my visits to your office and conversations reflected that and my intention on how I would conduct the role as the Department of Homeland Security Secretary.
Got a brief follow-up to that.
Sure.
So it's data
Yes.
and facts that we can all agree on that drive our policy and not political theater. Would you agree?
Well, certainly, sir, we need to be addressing facts and information rather than political theater. We also need to speak truth to facts. So I think it's important that we're willing to confront our challenges head on and have those conversations. And you'll see me back at your office door very soon to continue our work together.
Very good. Thank you.
And I want to second basically what Senator Peters has said. Like on records requests, I've told him, and I plan on it, it's going to be administration of my party. But if he wants records and they're legitimate records, we're going to sign requests together, and we'd like to get the records. It also helps, though, and I think Senator Langford mentioned this, is you ask a question, not you, but to the administration or any administration, and they're like, oh, yeah, we'll get back to you on it. Many times I've even asked in advance, and I would suggest that we ask in advance together. We ask in advance. If you're coming in a month, we say we want this data, be prepared to talk about it. And if you are, you'll have many more friends on both sides because what usually happens, and that's why I don't like springing the question. If it's a technical question that needs data, we're going to tell you in advance, at least I will, and we want you to come prepared with that. And that goes a long way because really what happens is we get stiff-armed. They say, we'll get back to you, and then we have no way to force you really, other than we could cut the money off, and nobody ever does that. But you'll have 200,000 people working for you. By goodness, send your experts out, scour the records. And it is true. I mean, facts are difficult, and sometimes there's different spins on the same set of facts, but I think that will help. On the drones, I think we need more facts, so I'm more than willing to work with the ranking member on doing something on drones, but I don't want every sheriff out there shooting up in the sky at stuff. We got to figure out, we got to get the truth about, do we really have drones everywhere flying all the time? How many of them are planes? How many of them are drones? And let's go through this, and then let's figure out. And then let's talk about how we bring drones down. If we interrupt and collect a lot of cellular signal through that, are we doing it with a warrant? What are we going to do with all the Americans' data that we've collected to take down drones? If we have to take a whole cell tower's worth of data, there's a lot of innocent people's data is going to be collected in that. Is that being gotten rid of? So I think there are ways we can get to the right place. Everybody, obviously, nobody wants drones coming down. And the only other thing that I'd add on drones before I turn it over to Senator Langford is, look, I'm all for the NFL being protected, the Super Bowl being protected. They need to pay. They are a very rich organization. They want drones flying over in New Orleans. I'm all for it. The NFL ought to pay the government if the government's doing it, or we ought to have private contractors doing it, but they shouldn't just get it for free. Senator Lankford.
Thank you. Thanks again.